Chapter 289. After selecting the target, Xiaoqing calmly took out tape and sealed his mouth. Then, the daughter in his body woke up. No matter how deep asleep a person was, they would be awakened by the pain. When the person woke up, he found that his mouth was sealed and his body was tied up. He couldn't even moan. Lu Dong and the others were sleeping beside him, but he couldn't ask for help. He could only feel something raging in his body, taking away his life bit by bit. He was like a fish on a chopping board. He couldn't resist at all. He didn't know why, but he remembered that when he was doing experiments in the past, those people on the experiment table were also in despair at that time. They couldn't resist, they couldn't even struggle. They could only watch as the scalpel cut open their skin and even their stomachs. They looked at their own bodies, like pigs being slaughtered, spread out on the operating table. Their fresh organs were still beating. The next morning, Lu Dong woke up late. This was the best sleep he had in a while. There were no roars of zombies, no rotting smell, no despair, and no fear. Then he opened his eyes and saw the corpse hanging in the tent. The naked corpse was hung in the posture of a victim in Western mythology. The body was full of scars, and there wasn't even a piece of intact skin. The most frightening thing was that his eyelids had been cut off, revealing his protruding eyeballs. The corners of his mouth had also been cut open into a smile. Blood was like lipstick, smeared all over his cracked mouth. It was bright red, making him look like a clown who was juggling. Bloody horror, and indescribable panic. How did he die? Lu Dong didn't know at all. He even slept soundly and had a beautiful dream. In the dream, he returned to the capital, entered the research institute, and used his power to capture Xiaoqing. Xiaoqing was lying on the operating table for the experiment, and he could do whatever he wanted to her. However, when he woke up, his companion died in such a horrible way. Did the experimental subjects come back for revenge? No. They had already left. Lu Dong's eyes became red and bulging because of excessive fear and panic. He was stunned for a few seconds before he rolled out of the tent. Someone died. That blood-curdling scream reverberated throughout the entire campsite. Xiaoqing flipped over in her bed and smirked. She slowly got up and changed her clothes without any hurry. Then, she led her son and a group of friends in the direction of the sound. Lu Dong had been carried up by the paranormals who had heard the commotion. His legs were weak, and he almost lost control of his bowels. To be honest, he had seen countless corpses that were even more terrifying than this one. He had even created many terrifying corpses with his own hands. However, when this corpse became his companion, when his life was also threatened, everything was different. Many people entered the tent and untied the corpses. When they untied the corpses, they realized that the corpses had been hung up with strips of bed sheets. When the corpses were brought out, the faces of the people in charge of the bases were very ugly. The people on night patrol were the best of the best in their bases. However, someone had been killed, and tortured to death at that, and the people on night patrol had not noticed at all. It was a slap in the face. One of the people in charge took a deep breath, and then called the people in charge of night patrol over. Did you hear any suspicious sounds or see any suspicious people last night? Chapter 290. They all blushed and shook their heads. As night patrols, they were very serious. They didn't slack off at all. However, someone sneaked in, killed a man, and left without anyone noticing. Should they say that the person was too strong, or that they were too weak? Lu Dong was half broken at the moment. He was being held up, but he was still shouting, "Someone died right next to me. Right next to me. Do you all eat shit? Someone sneaked in and no one noticed it. You'll only pay attention to it when everyone's head is cut off one day, right?" Everyone's face turned pale. After all, the truth was too embarrassing, especially when the body was lying there. They didn't even need to explain. Lu Dong no longer had his usual seriousness and calmness. He jumped up and down and said, "It must be her. She must have colluded with the zombies. She wants to kill me." As he spoke, he pointed at Xiaoqing, his spittle flying far away. Xiaoqing, on the other hand, was very calm. She rolled up her sleeves and said, "You've been slandering me from the beginning. I didn't lower myself to your level because you were overly frightened. I originally thought that after you settled down for a day, you would be able to regain your calmness. I didn't expect that you would still pour dirty water on me. Does that mean that as long as someone dies, it's me who kills them? Does it mean that I colluded with the zombies? If you can't poop, will you blame me for blocking your ass?" Xiaoqing's words were vulgar, but it made many people feel happy. They really hated those who bit people like mad dogs. They didn't know how to look at people's faces. Except for ordering people around, they looked down on others. However, Lu Dong's status was high, so many people didn't dare to provoke him. Xiaoqing's words were exactly what they were thinking. Xiaoqing didn't stop. "According to your theory, if your wife has a baby, it's also mine, right? Why don't you go up to the sky and stand side by side with the sun? Do you want me to send you?" Moi. She had a cold expression on her face as she said those sarcastic words in a serious manner. It was actually quite touching. Lu Dong was already on the verge of a mental breakdown, and now he was even more agitated. He pointed at Xiaoqing and shouted, "Is there a second possibility? It's you. It must be you. It must be you and those zombies working together. You and Yin Yi are the same. It's the same. Alright, hurry up and bring him to take his medicine." Xiaoqing made a goodbye gesture and said, "You can't stop taking the medicine. Hurry up and feed him the medicine, so that he won't be tormented later." Those paranormals also felt that Xiaoqing was right, so several of them carried Lu Dong away. Even when he was being carried away, Lu Dong was still cursing loudly. The others cleaned up the corpses and other things that needed to be cleaned up. Although they all believed that it wasn't Xiaoqing's doing, it was still very strange after all. They couldn't catch the culprit, so they were also panicked. Who knew who the culprit was? Was it really Lu Dong? Or was it targeting everyone? They couldn't help but panic at such a silent method of killing people. Could it be that the group of high-level zombies had returned? But why did they want to kill Lu Dong? It was like Lu Dong was a delicious cake. They had been besieging him since the beginning. TSK, TSK. Those who didn't know better would think that Lu Dong had slept with those zombies' wives. That was why they kept chasing him. Xiaoqing stretched herself and lazily calculated who she should kill next. That was the effect she wanted. She wanted Lu Dong to be terrified and desperate, but there was nothing he could do but watch his death coming. If she let him die so easily, how could she be worthy of those who were used as test subjects and died on the operating table? There were also those pitiful people who were still alive but could only watch as they turned into monsters. They would rather die a quick death. Chapter 291. She was not a saint, nor an angry youth. Sometimes, when her bottom line was crossed, she could turn into a shura. A shura would not win people over with virtue, nor would she influence people with kindness. She would only kill to stop killing. The next person to die had been decided. Xiaoqing took the snacks handed over by Dummy and gnawed on them. Although something like this had happened, they still had to go on. But they sped up their pace on the way back. If they didn't stay in the wild at night and return to the base, they should be fine. They didn't believe that those zombies could chase them to the base and kill them. Lu Dong obviously suffered a big blow. His hair was much whiter. During lunch, he was holding a bowl around the pot. His expression was a little dull. Xiaoqing didn't sympathize with him at all. Was old an excuse to do whatever he wanted? The more he flaunted his seniority, the more Xiaoqing hated him. He was already very old and should have been more clear-headed. He should have known what he was doing. However, he was the main culprit among the group of beasts. He was the initiator of everything. He was the perpetrator of all evil. Xiao Qing glanced at him. Her eyes became colder. She didn't want to make Lu Dong happy when she was unhappy. So, Xiao Qing silently activated the daughter in one of the researchers' bodies. Everyone was eating with their heads lowered, but one of the researchers beside Lu Dong suddenly swelled up like an inflated balloon. Lu Dong accidentally touched him. Like a punctured balloon, the researcher's body quickly exploded. At the moment of explosion, the daughter turned into ashes. There was absolutely no trace left. As the flesh and blood flew and fell to the ground, there was no trace left. Those pieces of flesh fell like rain, falling on Lu Dong's head, body, and bowl. He was completely stunned. He looked at the porridge in the bowl that was dyed red by the pieces of flesh. Then, he suddenly lay on the ground and began to vomit. He vomited very violently, as if he wanted to vomit out his internal organs. Not only him, but the people around him were vomiting too. After all, those pieces of flesh didn't have eyes. Not only did they fall on him, but they also fell on other people. It was just that Lu Dong had more. Imagine, while they were eating, a living person beside them suddenly exploded. Blood, flesh, and bones flew everywhere, and even fell into the bowl. Who wouldn't vomit if it happened to them? Other than vomiting, he was more afraid, especially Lu Dong. He felt like he was going crazy. Death was following him like a shadow, unwilling to let him go for even a moment. He even felt a chill run down his spine, as if the Grim Reaper's scythe was resting on his neck. Lu Dong vomited until he was dizzy, as if he was going to vomit out his internal organs. After he finished vomiting, he lay in the pool of blood with a dull look in his eyes and did not get up for a long time. If he could still identify Xiao Qing before, what about now? Xiao Qing sat calmly in the distance, eating his meal. However, there was another person beside him who died without an intact body. Most importantly, he didn't even know how that person died. He only saw him suddenly turn into a pile of flesh and blood, and then there wasn't even a corpse left. This was simply too terrifying and too alarming. Could it be that someone could remotely control other people's lives? If that was really the case, wouldn't it be too terrible? Not only Lu Dong was afraid, but more people were also afraid. They were afraid that they would become the next blood fireworks and explode with a crash. Some people even began to quietly stay away from Lu Dong. They finally realized that the thing behind their backs, who they didn't know whether it was a human or a ghost, seemed to be targeting Lu Dong and his survivors. At least, the ones who died so far were the researchers who had been with Lu Dong before, the survivors of this time's incident. As for the others, whether they were ordinary people or superpowered people, they were not affected. They couldn't help but think more about it. However, they were just guessing. Now, all of them were in a panic. Everyone was afraid that they would be the next person who suddenly died. No matter what, the base at least had to pretend. After this incident, few people still had the appetite to eat. Only a few people came forward and began to check the bodies. Although it was called a body, in fact, there was only a pile of minced meat left. There were also some bones that were not easy to break, but they were even more broken than the pig bones at the bottom of the soup. Those few people who had probably studied medicine before the doomsday were checking the bodies while retching. If they wanted to find something, at least a big piece of the body, and then check if there were any scars or internal injuries. But when they looked at the ground, the biggest piece was no bigger than a fist. How could they check it? No matter how good a doctor was, it was impossible to find any clues from a pile of minced meat. So, they were actually just going through the motions. After checking the bodies, they all shook their heads. No one found anything. One of the people in charge of the base had to say, "First, help President Lu up. Go and change your clothes." A few people come and clean up the scene. So, this person's death could only be left unsettled. What if they didn't find anything? They didn't even know how he died. It couldn't be that he had sat by the fire for too long because of thermal expansion and contraction, right? When Lu Dong was helped up, not only was his hair gray and had lost its luster, but his face was also wrinkled. There was no vitality at all. In the past, although he was old and had wrinkles, he had always been in good spirits. He looked a little younger than his actual age. But now, he was so old that he looked like a candle in the wind. It was as if he would die in the next second. After all, he had suffered 2 consecutive blows in one day. Each time, it was his only remaining companion who had died. Their deaths were extremely tragic. It was as if the group of experimental subjects had really come back for revenge. Even if his heart was made of iron, he couldn't take it anymore. Chapter 292. Now, there was only one person left, the one he had brought out of the institute. Lu Dong had a hunch that after this person died, it would be his turn. He had never felt so powerless, because he had always been in charge of other people's lives. This was the first time that his life was in someone else's hands. He felt like he was standing on the edge of a cliff, with the wind blowing behind him, as if it would push him off the cliff in the next second, but it didn't do anything. It made him so scared that sometimes he even thought that it would be better for him to die earlier, so that he wouldn't have to worry about it anymore. However, after the second person died, they arrived at the base. After entering the base, the rescue personnel organized by each base had to withdraw in batches. The rest of the elites were responsible for escorting Lu Dong to the capital. Since they arrived at the base, nothing had happened for a day and a night. Everyone was relieved. Even the person in charge of the base thought that it must be because the base was heavily guarded that those zombies couldn't get in. However, Lu Dong still yelled every day, saying that when he went to bed at night, he felt that someone was squatting at the head of his bed, quietly watching him. However, when he opened his eyes, that person was gone. At first, the person in charge of the base sent people to guard outside the house. He sent a whole team of 20 people to surround the house like an iron bucket. Even a fly or a mosquito couldn't fly in. However, when he got up the next day, Lu Dong still yelled that someone was quietly watching him in front of his bed at night. At that time, the person in charge of the base was a little annoyed. He sped up and sent all the rescue teams back, then gathered a team of superpowered people above level 3, ready to escort Lu Dong out. However, when he took the first step out of the base, the only researcher beside Lu Dong, who was heavily protected, exploded into a mass of bloody fireworks. This time, it was even closer than the last time. When the flesh and blood flew, it covered Lu Dong's entire body. His face and body were covered in sticky flesh and blood. When he breathed, the thick smell of blood wafted into his nose. Lu Dong had completely broken down. No matter what, he refused to leave the base. He looked around at the people protecting him in panic. He felt a cold gaze fall on him. It was filled with malice and murderous intent. It swept past his throat, his heart. When he tried to find that pair of eyes, he couldn't find them. He really broke down. He crawled back to the base and refused to go out again. The person in charge of the base had no choice but to arrange for many people to guard him. In fact, the person in charge was also a little panicked. How did this person die? There were more than 50 level 3 paranormals present. Among them, there was no lack of psychic paranormals with particularly sharp senses. However, none of them had discovered how the researcher had died. Just like that, he exploded into a bloody firework. It was very beautiful. If there was really someone targeting Lu Dong and the others in the dark, that person's strength was definitely very strong. Moreover, everyone began to suspect who had been targeting Lu Dong all this time. If it was like what Lu Dong said, the zombies were here for revenge, then why did the zombies keep chasing him? In theory, even if zombies had a certain level of intelligence, they wouldn't show such a terrifying ability to retaliate. Just like the zombie in the dark, its intelligence was much higher than that of ordinary humans. It had a premeditated plan to retaliate. The second question was, why did the zombies want to take revenge on Lu Dong? Could it be that Lu Dong had done something to make that zombie want to take revenge on him and torture him? Chapter 293. All kinds of questions were lingering in everyone's mind, but no one asked. Lu Dong seemed to have gone crazy. He started to shout whenever he saw someone. There was a zombie chasing after him. The zombie was watching him in the dark, wanting to take revenge on him. In order to make Lu Dong feel at ease, the base arranged several brave paranormals to sleep with Lu Dong at night. If someone really squatted at his bedside and watched him quietly as Lu Dong said, then these paranormals would definitely find out. In the middle of the night, several paranormals were awakened by Lu Dong's scream. Someone! Someone! Lu Dong's face was distorted. He grabbed his short gray hair, and his face and eyes were full of horror. Those paranormals were startled. They hurriedly got out of bed, put on a vigilant posture, and turned on the light, but they didn't see anyone. They even searched under the bed, but they didn't even see a footprint, let alone a person. However, Lu Dong insisted that there were people around, and he didn't let them turn off the light. He sat in the corner with the quilt in his arms for the whole night. His spiritual power had been activated until his spiritual power was exhausted. The few paranormals had no choice but to sit with him. But nothing happened for one night, and several nights in a row, they couldn't stand it anymore. They all proposed to change shifts, and the leader of the base completely lost his patience. In his eyes, Lu Dong was now a madman. He didn't know what kind of shameful things he had done. If it weren't for Lu Dong's special identity, he really didn't even want to care about him. So the leader of the base directly refused to see Lu Dong, and just sent someone to take shifts to accompany him at night. Lu Dong was even more desperate. He didn't lie, and he wasn't scared out of his wits. He could clearly feel that someone was standing by his bed every night, looking at him with a bone-chilling gaze. He felt that his eyelids were dead, and he desperately wanted to open his eyes to see what that person looked like, but he couldn't open them. Sometimes he could even feel a cold blade across his neck, leaving a layer of goosebumps on his skin. That feeling was too terrifying. Many times, after he woke up, he didn't want to suffer this torture anymore. He wanted to end his own life, but he didn't have the courage. At this moment, Lu Dong realized that he had lived in vain all these years. The older he got, the more he feared death. Even at this stage, he still did not dare to pick up a knife and end his life. When he completely collapsed, he looked at himself in the mirror. His white hair was very messy, and his face was covered in layers of wrinkles. There were also dark circles under his eyes because he had not slept well for a long time. He was so old that he could not recognize him. At this moment, his mind was in a trance. He could even hear countless people demanding his life. The seeds of hatred sprouted in his body and grew continuously, eating away at his internal organs bit by bit. As if he was possessed, he walked to the highest floor of the base and jumped down. Lu Dong died in the middle of the night. The next morning, someone discovered that he had died at the bottom of the building. Because the building was very high, his face was unrecognizable from the fall. Only the wisp of a relieved smile at the corner of his mouth was chilling. Xiao Qing stood outside the crowd and watched for a long time. She only left when the base sent people to collect the body. This time, all the culprits had been executed. She could finally heave a sigh of relief and put down one of her worries. Next, she just needed to send Qin Zishi home. After returning to the temporary residence, Xiao Qing asked someone to call Qin Zishi over. The group had a celebratory feast together, and then Qin Zishi was ready to leave. Chapter 294. He didn't leave because he wanted to see that group of crazy people die with his own eyes. Now that Lu Dong was dead, it was time for him to go back. After dinner, Shao Qing discussed with Qin Zishi. Shall I send you back? It's on the way anyway. Why don't we leave tomorrow? Qin Zishi was a little dazed. He was still chewing on biscuits like a little squirrel. There were still some biscuit crumbs on the corner of his pink lips. He looked at Shao Qing in a daze and licked his lips with his little red tongue. After a while, he reacted and hurriedly said, "It's really not troublesome. I can go back by myself." He had already troubled Shao Qing a lot. "It's on the way." Shao Qing couldn't help but touch his hair. Then she said, "I'm going to the capital. Let's go together." Qin Zishi didn't want to be separated from his friends, so he hesitated for a moment and nodded. Although he was still expressionless, he chewed on the biscuits much faster. Even the little ahog on his head stood up a little. Shao Qing's eyes had a hint of a smile. She rubbed his face. "You can smile at times like this. You don't have to be so serious every day." Qin Zishi puffed up his cheeks and widened his eyes. "I'm not young anymore. This is called dignity. My father is like this. His subordinates are all afraid of him." Several people were amused. They all said, "Yes, he is very dignified. Very dignified, yes, you're not young anymore." Shao Qing touched Qin Zishi's head again. Her face was expressionless, but her eyes were full of smiles. Qin Zishi was a little disheartened. He muttered in a low voice, "I'm really not young anymore. In a few months, I'll be 18. When they first met Qin Zishi, they thought that he was an arrogant young master with a bad temper. After spending some time with him, they realized that Qin Zishi was quite cute." Shao Qing supported her chin with one hand. Watching her friends tease Qin Zishi, she felt that her mentality was much younger. Little Baozi rolled his eyes at the side, thinking of a plan. It seemed that Mama liked brother Xiaoxi very much. Sister Pan Pan and the others also liked him very much. Then, if he let brother Xiaoxi become his family, no one would object, right? Even if they found out that he was the one who did it, it wouldn't matter. Mama loved him so much, so she definitely wouldn't be fierce to him. The next day, they were ready to leave. Before they left, Lu Dong's body was being transported out. At the end of the world, cremation had become very important, because corpses could easily become food for mutated animals. It was safer to burn them. Moreover, it could cause diseases such as the plague. Therefore, as long as the conditions were met, most of the corpses would be burned and then buried. Shao Qing and the others stopped at the door and waited until Lu Dong's body was carried away before they continued on their way. Gu Pan Pan muttered, "What bad luck." When they went out, they actually went out with Lu Dong's body. If it wasn't bad luck, what was it? Shao Qing and the others followed the funeral team from a distance. When they reached a fork in the road, several zombies suddenly fell from the sky. Several thick tentacles rolled up Lu Dong's body. Under the cover of several zombies, they quickly escaped. The funeral team was shocked. They had encountered many surprise attacks and ambushes by zombies. Every time, they would lose some of their companions. However, this was the first time that zombies came roaring. They didn't bite or kill people. They just took the body and ran away. Was this a joke? Now, those people really believed that there were zombies secretly following Lu Dong, trying to take revenge. Didn't they see that? Lu Dong was dead, and they didn't even want to let go of his body. Chapter 295. After the experiment subjects did that, Shao Qing was completely cleared of suspicion. No one would associate it with her anymore. After all, the murderer had appeared. Shao Qing did not stay for long and left with her friends. She walked to the other side of the fork. After walking for about 10 minutes, Xiao Qing poked Xiao Tong's shoulder. The two of them had a good tacit understanding. Xiao Qing and Xiao Tong looked at each other and understood what Xiao Tong meant. Xiao Qing stopped and said lightly, "Brothers who have been following us secretly, don't hide anymore. Why don't you come out and have a chat? You've been following us all the way. It's quite tiring, isn't it?" Soon, a chuckle came from behind Xiao Qing. Xiao Qing turned around and saw Yi as expected. He had taken off his white coat and changed into a simple casual outfit. There was a group of experimental subjects following him. The group of experimentals were all acting strangely, giving Gu Panpan and the others a fright. They immediately went on alert. Xiao Qing comforted Gu Panpan and the others, then said, "Why are you guys here?" "To thank you." Yi smiled and said, "If it weren't for you, we might not have had the chance to kill Lu Dong, let alone let him be punished like this. I just got rid of a scum. You don't have to thank me." Xiao Qing glanced behind Yi. There was a corpse dragged by a tentacle. She asked, "Where are you going?" "To Jiang City. I'll take them there and settle down." Yi said bitterly, "You've seen what we look like. We can't be accepted by humans. Only zombies can accept us. You're very lucky. If you encounter any problems in the future that you can't solve, you can come to Jiang City to find us. As long as we can help, we won't refuse." Xiao Qing was silent for a moment. No matter what the reason was, no matter who did it, as long as they became like this, they were destined not to be accepted by humans. Xiao Qing looked at the experimental subjects and felt very sad. They used to have a normal life with their own families and friends. However, because of some selfish people, all of this was ruined. They became strange and did not even have the right to be human. However, these half-zombie experimental subjects were more affectionate and righteous than living people. Xiao Qing would rather be friends with them than get along with those scum in human skin. The experimental subject that looked like a baby crawled out of the young man's chest. He looked at Xiao Qing curiously and then quietly reached out his hand. His hand looked as if it had been soaked in water for a long time. It was pale and full of wrinkles. It looked very ugly. Xiao Qing gently held his small hand. The baby immediately smiled. As soon as he smiled, his mouth opened widely. Together with the fetal hair on his head, his extraordinarily large head, and his wrinkled facial features, it was a little scary. Xiao Qing did not dislike him at all. She gently kissed his forehead. The baby was even happier. He held Xiao Qing's hand and then opened his palm. In his palm was a high-level zombie nucleus. It was completely transparent. When the sunlight reflected, it looked very beautiful. The baby stuffed the nucleus into Xiao Qing's palm. How could Xiao Qing accept it? She gently patted the baby's head and then said, "I don't need it. You can take it." The baby was very stubborn. When he was pushed back, he was pushed back. In the end, he looked at Xiao Qing with his big eyes and felt very wronged. Yi could not help but say, "Just take it." On the way here, Xiaoyu specially led us to sweep through a few places just to find a higher-level crystal core for you as a gift. If you don't accept it, he'll be sad for a few days. Chapter 296. Xiao Qing had no choice but to accept it. Then, he took out a bunch of things and gave them to the baby called Xiaoyu. There were milk, drinks that babies could drink, food that Yan Chiyue made that zombies could eat, some baby clothes, and toys. He gave them all to Xiaoyu. Xiao Baozi was very sensible and contributed a lot of snacks. After giving Xiaoyu a bunch of things, Xiao Qing said, "If there's a need, I'll definitely go to Jiang City. But you guys, be careful. Once people like them were discovered, they would be reduced to experimental subjects again." Yi nodded, and then he said, "I've come here mainly because I need your help with something. Please go ahead." Xiao Qing couldn't help but take some clothes and snacks and gave them to another little girl. Yin Yi said, I have a younger brother called Yin Zhao. We were separated at the beginning of the apocalypse. At that time, I was in the laboratory, and he and my mother were still living in our hometown. After the apocalypse, I tried many ways to contact him, but I couldn't. If you meet him, please take care of him for me. Okay. Xiao Qing nodded and said, can you describe his appearance to me? Or rather, what are his characteristics? My brother looks very delicate. Ever since he was young, everyone in the family said that he looked like a girl. Every time they said that, he would throw a tantrum. In the end, when he was 14, he got into a car accident and left a very long scar at the corner of his eye. It has never healed. Also, he hates people calling him Xiao Zhao because it sounds like Xiao Zhao from the dragon slaying heaven. When he recalled his brother, Yin Ye's expression became much gentler. He said sincerely, I'll have to trouble you. But with my current appearance, even if I find him, I can't take care of him, there will always be a way. The most important thing now is to find him. If I meet him, I'll take care of him for you. Xiao Qing couldn't help but pat Yin Ye's shoulder. Yin Ye smiled and said, we won't delay your journey. We're leaving. If you need anything, you must come to Jiang City to find us. I will. Xiao Qing nodded. Yin Yi then left with the group of people. As Xiao Yu was leaving, he leaned on the young man's shoulder and looked at Xiao Qing. He had never felt his mother's warmth, but today, he felt it from Xiao Qing, so he was reluctant to leave and a little sad. Xiao Qing's heart ached even more. If she had died back then and little Bun had survived, wouldn't he be as pitiful? Seeing that Xiao Qing was in a bad mood, the little Bun quietly reached out his little paw and held his mommy's hand. Then he whispered, Mommy. Smile, Xiao Qing rubbed her son's face and felt much better in an instant. She continued walking with her friends. No matter what, life had to go on. The most important goal now was to send Qin Zishi back to the capital. Little Bun's temper was like a gust of wind. It came and went quickly. Soon, he happily went to ride the bear. This bear was his new love. Every time he rode it, Yaya's legs would turn to jelly. As an authentic rabbit, Yaya was so scared that she almost peed. When she stood on the bear, her whole body was trembling. However, after so many times, she had gotten used to it. She could even stand on the bear's head and look into the distance with a serious rabbit face. Then, little Bun slapped her down and she rolled on the ground, crying. While little Bun was riding the bear, he kept thinking about how to make Qin Zishi his family. Firstly, he needed a chance for his mommy and Qin Zishi to be alone. Secondly, no one could have a chance to interfere. Chapter 297. Then, when the rice was cooked, everything would be settled. The plan was perfect. Little Bun rubbed his chin with a thoughtful expression. Then, he started to worry about how to create this opportunity. Sometimes, whatever one wanted to happen would happen. He was worried about not being able to create an opportunity for Mama and brother Xiaoxi to be alone together, and the opportunity came. At that time, the situation was like this. They had set up camp by the river, and Gu Panpan had suggested that they go to the river to catch some fish. Then, they would go to the vicinity to pick some wild vegetables and catch some prey. Then, they could have a sumptuous picnic. When little Bun heard that, he raised both his hands and feet in agreement. Originally, Xiao Qing was the main force in this matter, but when it was time to assign tasks, little Bun started to roll on the ground, saying that his stomach hurt. Thus, he succeeded in making Xiao Qing stay. Then, he hugged Qin Zishi's leg and refused to let him go, so Qin Zishi stayed too. Almost everyone else scattered, and even Xiao Tong followed Gu Panpan and Ao Lan to pick wild vegetables. When they saw this, they let Xiao Qing and Qin Zishi stay behind to accompany little Bun. In any case, with Xiao Qing's strength, she definitely wouldn't encounter any danger. Once those people left, Little Bun started to think about how to do it. He secretly thought of a way, and then very cleverly whined, "Mama, I want to drink milk." Xiao Qin rubbed Little Bun's head. "Your stomach doesn't hurt anymore. I'll warm it up for you. Mama is the best." Little Bun grinned. After watching Xiao Qin leave, he said to Qin Zishi, "Brother Xiaoxi, can you help me look for Yiya? It ran out again." Qin Zishi nodded with a serious expression, and then also went out to look for it. When the two of them left, he secretly took out a flower from his little sunny pouch. The flower had red petals and was already somewhat dried up. He had once secretly eavesdropped on the conversation between the stall owner and the buyer. The stall owner said that this flower was called the 7 days acacia. Not only was its medicinal effect particularly strong, but it also did not harm the body. Even a woman could cling on to a man. As long as one petal was enough, raw rice could be cooked. He couldn't understand the first few sentences. He could only understand 2 sentences. The first sentence was that it wouldn't hurt the body, which meant that it wouldn't hurt his mama and brother Xiaoxi. The second sentence was that what's done cannot be undone. Didn't he want the raw rice to be cooked? That way, brother Xiaoxi wouldn't leave the spicy food. Therefore, he secretly took one and threw a crystal stone into the stall owner's box in embarrassment. Only then did he sneak away. He had to succeed in one go. Little Bun sneakily climbed down from the bed and walked to the table barefooted. Then, he secretly stuffed the flower petals into the kettle. He was afraid that the effect wouldn't be good enough, so he stuffed the whole flower in. After stuffing it in, the Little Bun got into the bed guiltily and turned around, waiting for Xiao Qin to come back. What if her mother found out? Would she be angry? What if she didn't want him anymore? Just as the Little Bun was letting his imagination run wild, Xiao Qin came in with a bottle of milk. Qin Zishi also came in with Yiya in her arms. The Little Bun immediately raised his little heart and was very nervous. It wasn't until Xiao Qin passed the milk bottle to him that he said softly, "Mama, you drink too." Xiao Qin patted the Little Bun's head and felt that her son had healed her. She chuckled and said, "Mama doesn't drink milk. Drinking water is enough." "Then, Mama, I'll get you some water," the Little Bun said in a childish voice. "Don't you have a stomachache? Don't bother yourself." Xiao Qin knocked the Little Bun's head. Then, she also felt that she couldn't let Qin Zishi just sit there, so she got up and poured a glass of water. The Little Bun stared at the glass of water eagerly. His heart was beating like thunder. Was it going to succeed? Chapter 298. What's that smell? Xiao Qin lowered her head and sniffed. There was a faint floral fragrance in the water. It was very light, with a hint of indescribable sweetness. The Little Bun almost jumped up. His eyes were as wide as a cow's. He rolled his eyes and rolled on the bed. "Mama, my stomach hurts." Xiao Qin was not in the mood to find out where the fragrance came from. She quickly rubbed her son's stomach. Qin Zishi came over with Yiya in her arms. She frowned and said, "Did he eat something wrong? Did he have a stomachache?" Others might not know, but Xiao Qin knew very well that the Little Bun's body was half human and half zombie. How could he have a stomachache so easily? She rubbed the Little Bun's stomach and connected the dots in her mind. Actually, with her intelligence, she could have found something wrong long ago, but she was a mother. When her child was sick, her mind was already in a mess. That was why she did not discover the Little Bun's clumsy lie. Xiao Qin only realized it when Qin Zishi spoke. She looked at the Little Bun and then looked at Qin Zishi. She then said softly, "Little Shi, can I trouble you to boil some water? I want to fill a hot water bag for the baby." Qin Zishi agreed. She put Yiya on the bed and went out. The Little Bun had already sensed that something was wrong. He held the quilt very nervously. Xiao Qing did not say anything. She just looked at him quietly. The little bun curled up again. He looked up at Xiao Qing guiltily. Xiao Qing asked, "Stomach hurts?" The little bun nodded and then shook his head quietly. His pitiful appearance made people feel sorry for him. Xiao Qing held back the pain in her heart. She squatted down and asked in a low voice, "What's in the water?" The little bun trembled and stuffed himself into the quilt. Xiao Qing poked him and asked again, "What's in the water?" The little bun stuffed himself into the blanket and refused to raise his head until Xiao Qing asked for the third time, "What's in the water?" Only then did little Baozi raise his head. His eyes were red. He sobbed and said, "The cook, what are you cooking?" Xiao Qing hardened her heart and continued to ask. The little bun sniffled and said, "It's already been cooked." As he spoke, he started to cry. Baby doesn't want brother Xiaoxi to leave. I don't want to be separated from brother Xiaoxi. I want to be family with brother Xiaoxi. Once the rice is cooked, brother Xiaoxi won't leave. Xiao Qing's mouth twitched. She finally understood what little Baozi meant by cooking rice. She was actually very angry because little Baozi had done all this behind her back and even schemed against her. This made her feel a little sad. She had risked her life to give birth to a son and raised a son. Now, he wanted to scheme against her. Not only did her heart feel cold, but it also hurt. But seeing little Baozi crying so sadly, Xiao Qing began to think about her own problems. Did she do something wrong? She thought that she had protected little Baozi well. She thought that she could let little Baozi grow up healthily and happily. But she forgot that he was a child. Children needed a childhood. But little Baozi followed her everywhere every day. Especially at the beginning of the apocalypse, he was always on the move and had no fixed place to stay. Danger lurked everywhere. Every day, he walked the line between life and death. He didn't have any toys, friends, or playmates. But he was obedient and sensible. He never asked her for anything or made any requests. His only friend was a rabbit. So, he always treated Yiya very well. When he got Yiya, he treated her like a treasure. Chapter 299. Did she do something wrong? So the little bun was not happy at all. Seeing the little bun cry so sadly, Xiao Qing's heart ached. She pursed her lips, but didn't know what to do. Should she keep Qin Zishi? No, Qin Zishi had his own home and family. He had to go back eventually. Xiao Qing was upset and didn't say a word. However, the little bun misunderstood. He thought that Xiao Qing was angry and didn't want him anymore. At that time, he didn't even dare to cry. He sniffed softly. His nose and eyes were red. Although there were no tears, he looked very pitiful. Xiao Qing looked down and saw the little bun sticking out his round, white, and tender but with a pitiful expression that said, "Oh my God, Mama doesn't want me anymore. What should I do? I'm scared." The little bun's nose and eyes were all red. She smiled immediately and lowered her head to kiss the little bun's nose. Then she said, "It's Mama's fault. I didn't think about your feelings. Do you like Xiaoxi a lot?" The little bun hesitated for a long time. On one hand, he was afraid that his mother would be angry, but on the other hand, he didn't want to go against his own thoughts. After all, he really liked brother Xiaoxi. After a long, long time, the little bun nodded slightly. Then he pounced forward and hugged Xiao Qing's neck. "Mama, don't abandon baby. Baby will be good in the future and won't do bad things anymore. Don't give baby away to others, I won't." Xiao Qing held the little bun's pitiful face and kissed it a few times. Then she said very seriously, "Baby, Mama is wrong this time, but you're also wrong. First, don't drug others casually in the future. That's wrong, understand? Secondly, no matter what you want to do, you have to ask for other people's opinions. It's wrong to force others to do something. Just like this time, if Mom didn't find out about your little trick and really fell for it, Mom would be very sad. It's because Mom trusted you that she was deceived by you. Your brother Xiaoxi would also be very sad because what you did was a kind of betrayal to him. Then, the two of us wouldn't like you anymore. Do you understand? The little bun hurriedly nodded and sobbed. Baby knows it's wrong. I won't do it again. But Mama, I really like brother Xiaoxi. Baby wants to play with brother Xiaoxi forever. Baby wants to live with brother Xiaoxi. I don't want brother Xiaoxi to go back. Xiaoqing rubbed the little bun's cheeks and said, after we send Xiaoxi back to the capital and then come back to deal with the matters in S City, I will discuss with Pan Pan and the others to settle down in the capital. Then, when I have nothing to do, I can go visit brother Xiaoxi, okay? The little bun hurriedly nodded and wriggled in Xiaoqing's arms. He was still young, and his three views were still in a state of development. He relied completely on what he saw and heard to determine the solution when he encountered problems. However, none of the people around him were good people. Any one of them was at the level of a devil, such as Yan Qiue, Xiaoqing, and even Gu Panpan. They were all people who killed decisively. Therefore, the little bun's character today was independent and decisive. He was too independent and decisive, and without proper guidance, he didn't know what was right and what was wrong. Fortunately, Xiaoqing discovered this in time. Otherwise, in a few years, a little devil might have appeared out of nowhere. Moreover, the little bun's superpower was very outstanding. It was just that there were too many strong people around him, so he just needed to enjoy being protected. Xiaoqing deliberately protected him. Otherwise, the little bun would also be an outstanding superpower user. Chapter 300. His devouring ability was very effective against humans, zombies, and mutant animals. As long as they were not much stronger than him, they would be devoured. Moreover, he could only digest a part of the energy he devoured. Although he had to expel the rest, it could be used as energy for his attacks. It was scary to think of it this way. After comforting little Bun, Qin Zishi came in with a kettle and asked softly, "Where is the hot water bag?" To be honest, Xiaoqing was a little embarrassed, especially when she knew that her son wanted her to have sex with Qin Zishi. But now was not the time to be embarrassed. She had to cover up little Bun's lie, so she found a hot water bag, poured some water in it, and gave it to little Bun. Little Bun instantly understood and hurriedly hugged the hot water bag. When he looked at Qin Zishi, he still felt a little embarrassed and guilty. After Qin Zishi put down the kettle, he sat awkwardly at the side, his gaze clearly lingering on the cup on the table. Xiaoqing immediately felt even more embarrassed. Qin Zishi had clearly heard her conversation with little Bun. Although she didn't know how much he had heard, he clearly knew what little Bun had done. Otherwise, he wouldn't have appeared so awkward. The atmosphere in the entire space was very awkward. Fortunately, the group of people who went out to hunt came back. The three of them secretly breathed a sigh of relief and ended the awkward atmosphere. The main chef was still Yan Hanqing, followed by Xiaoqing, Gu Panpan, and the other girls. They were responsible for washing and cutting the vegetables. The men were responsible for handling the game. They caught a lot of game, including many fish. Crucian carps could be used to make soup, carps could be used to make sweet and sour soup, and small ones could be fried directly. In short, it was a very sumptuous lunch. Everyone ate happily. After lunch, Xiaoqing poked little Bun. Little Bun was a little embarrassed. He hugged Jia and secretly followed Qin Zishi, ready to apologize. Xiaoqing was afraid that little Bun's hard-earned companion would be gone because of his one mistake, so she urged him to apologize. Although the little Bun really went overboard this time, Xiaoqing believed that as long as he apologized sincerely, Qin Zishi would forgive him. After that, Xiao Qing went back to her room. Once she was back, Xiao Qing was stunned because Yan Qiue was drinking water at the table. Xiao Qing wanted to curse out loud because the atmosphere was too awkward. When everyone came back, Xiao Qing heaved a sigh of relief and forgot about the little bun's drug, so, the water that Yan Qiue drank was drugged. When Yan Qiue saw Xiao Qing coming back, she put down the cup and licked her lips. "Where did you get the water? It's a little sweeter than ordinary well water and river water. Do you want to pack a little more so that you can drink it when you run out of water in the future?" Xiao Qing was speechless. She didn't know how to face Yan Qiue, so she directly ignored him and opened the kettle. As she expected, there was a little red flower floating in the water. The flower was already a little withered. Now that it was full of water, it stretched its petals and floated up and down. It looked quite beautiful. However, this didn't change the fact that it was an aphrodisiac flower. In other words, Yan Qiue was drugged. Xiao Qing was so annoyed that she wanted to scratch her head. After Yan Qiue was drugged, she would definitely be the antidote. Otherwise, with Yan Qiue's temper, he would never find another woman even if he wanted to die. Chapter 301. Xiao Qing was extremely annoyed. She glanced at Yan Qiue from the corner of her eye and suddenly found that his eyes were full of slyness. She suddenly thought of something. What did Yan Qiue do? He was a researcher. He had a deep understanding of mutant plants, mutant animals, paranormals, and zombies. How could he not notice that there was something wrong with the water? Even if he didn't notice it when he poured it, how could he not notice it after drinking it? He could even tell her with relish that the water was really sweet. What was that saying again? The more you want to hide, the easier it is to be exposed. This was clearly a case of trying to cover up. A clever person may be the victim of his own cleverness. After thinking it through, Xiao Qing was no longer annoyed. She clapped her hands and looked at Yan Qiue with a faint smile. Then she said, "If you like it, you can drink the whole pot." Yan Qiue was dumbfounded. The script wasn't written like this. It was different from what he imagined. In fact, when he entered the house, he felt that something was wrong, but he didn't think too much about it. After all, it was no different from being in his own house. If he still needed to be on guard in his own house, then there was no point in living. Then he sat down and poured a glass of water. When the glass was about to touch his lips, he realized that something was wrong. There was something wrong with the water. Yan Qiue's research on various mutant plants was very profound. He sniffed carefully and found that the water had an aphrodisiac smell. He went crazy at that time. In Xiao Qing's house, he found water with an aphrodisiac smell. What else was there to say? Someone must have tried to drug Xiao Qing. How could this be tolerated? This couldn't be tolerated. However, Yan Qiue's thoughts were in a whirl. He quickly considered this point. Looking at the situation, Xiao Qing shouldn't have been drugged yet. Otherwise, she would have gone crazy by now. In other words, he was the first person to touch this glass of water. Then it would be easy. He could drink the water, and then... maybe he could directly pursue Xiao Qing. To be honest, since he abandoned everything and followed Xiao Qing to the S-City survivor base, Yan Qiue began to lose confidence. There were too many competitors and threats everywhere. He thought that he was a very outstanding man, but none of the men around Xiao Qing were worse than him. And it wasn't the first time that he confessed to Xiao Qing. And balls. He didn't get any response, no wonder he lost confidence. Imagine, a woman's eyes. He zheng's eyes. It would be strange if he had confidence. This was an opportunity. Yan Qiue was sure that if he was really drugged, Xiao Qing would never leave him alone. As long as they had sex again, even if it was for the sake of responsibility, Xiao Qing would accept him. At that time, he could talk to Xiaoqing, and he could almost get her. This was probably his only chance, and it was very tempting. Yan Qiue held the glass of water for half an hour. He was so hesitant that his forehead was sweating. In the end, he gave up. Yan Qiue was a very proud person. This kind of pride was not only shown in his way of doing things, but was also engraved in his bones. He knew that even if he used this kind of despicable method to get together with Xiaoqing, it would still leave her with regrets and estrangement in her heart. That was what he disdained to do. Even if Xiaoqing refused to accept him in the end, he wouldn't do such a thing. However, Yan Qiue still drank a little. It wasn't much. At most, it would let him do it for a while. Then Yan Qiue sat upright and still, waiting for Xiaoqing to find out. Then he could take the opportunity to act coquettishly and take advantage of her. Maybe he could get Xiaoqing's loving touch. Ahem, to improve their relationship. Chapter 302. Yan Qiue threw a tantrum and refused to go out. Since that day, Yan Qiue had been holed up in the tent. When they were on the road, he would crawl into the back seat and turn his back to everyone. It was very awkward. Xiaoqing couldn't help but want to laugh. Then she touched her chin. It seemed that she hadn't reminded him before. After he embarrassed himself, he really lost his temper. This little temper was quite stubborn. Xiaoqing began to think about how to coax Yan Qiue, who was throwing a tantrum, back. Probably because he had done something wrong before, Little Bun was especially attentive, obedient, and well-behaved these days. During lunch, he would often hold a pile of snacks or drinks and distribute them everywhere. Qin Zishi was a bit embarrassed and angry. Later, he thought it through. Little Bun was just a child. Why was he angry with him? In addition, Little Bun sincerely apologized, so he forgave him. The two of them stuck together all day long. This time, the journey to the capital was quite long. The group often stopped and walked. When they saw good scenery, they would stop and have a picnic. They lived like immortals. It didn't seem like they were struggling in the end of the world. Instead, it was more like they were traveling. Then, after many days of traveling, the group finally arrived at the capital. The capital was as bustling as before. From afar, they could see many people going in and out of the gate. Probably because of bad luck, when the group just arrived at the gate of the capital and got out of the car, before they had time to look at the gate, a badly mutilated corpse fell under their feet. Xiaoqing's group was stunned. First, they didn't expect that there would be someone who dared to be so presumptuous at the gate of the capital. Second, they didn't expect that they would be so lucky. The corpse fell right next to Xiaoqing's feet. The blood and dust splattered, staining Xiaoqing's trousers red. Bad luck. Yan Qiue couldn't stand it anymore. He tugged at Xiaoqing, took out a tissue, and half knelt by the side to wipe the stain on Xiaoqing's trousers. Xiaoqing didn't care about the stain. She pulled Yan Qiue and said, "What, you're not angry with me anymore?" Yan Qiue snorted. He held Xiaoqing's hand and said, "Who told you to watch me make a fool of myself? You didn't remind me. Yes, I was wrong." Xiaoqing touched his head. Her eyes curved and she looked very gentle. Yan Qiue didn't have any temper. He couldn't wait to hug Xiaoqing, find a place where there was no one else, and make love to her. Dummy Air was unwilling. He came over from the other side, grabbed Xiaoqing's other hand, and glared at Yan Qiue angrily. Lin Qifan felt his entire body stiffen. He could no longer shift his gaze away. He stared fixedly at Xiaoqing, carefully sizing her up. Those familiar eyes, that familiar gentleness, everything about her, am I dreaming? While Lin Qifan was frozen, the people beside him walked over angrily. The girl pointed at the corpse on the ground and said, "How dare you stain my dress? Drag it back. Cut it up and feed it to the dogs." Xiao Qing looked up and saw several people crowding around a young girl. The young girl's eyes were filled with arrogance, and her entire body was filled with an air of arrogance. Beside her, there was an even younger girl. She was battered and exhausted, and her body was riddled with wounds. She was being held down by a man, and tears streamed down her face as she looked at the corpse on the ground, constantly struggling. But she was just a weak girl. How could she struggle against an adult man? Moreover, he was a psychic. Chapter 303. Xiao Qing did not care about this kind of thing. There were too many injustices in the world. She had to find out who was right and who was wrong. Then, she would take care of it until the end. It was too tiring. A group of thugs rushed over and dragged the corpse from the ground. At this time, Xiao Qing discovered that he was still breathing. However, his breathing was very weak. If he was hit a little harder, he would really go to hell. Let go of my brother. If you have any problems, come at me. The girl kept struggling. The pampered girl was probably annoyed by listening to her. She turned around and slapped her. Bitch. Shut up. Isn't it easy to die? In a while, I will make sure that you can't die even if you want to. In Jingdu, no one dares to steal my man. The girl was slapped until her head was crooked. Her face quickly swelled up. She bit her lips tightly and stared at the girl who called herself Lu Xian. Then, she looked at Lin Qifan with contempt and spat out a mouthful of blood. Pay. On the other side, Xiao Qing also saw Lin Qifan. Her eyes were filled with disgust and murderous intent. If they weren't at the gates of the capital, she really wanted to rush up and stab this man. Hiding the anger in her eyes, Xiao Qing waved her hand. Let's go. Gu Panpan could not bear it. However, she knew that the ones who died the fastest in the apocalypse were not the weak, but the saints. It was not that you could not be kind, but you could not be kind. Sometimes, the people you saved might backstab you. She saw this more clearly than anyone else. She remembered that at the beginning of the apocalypse, they were trapped in the city. After being trapped for a period of time, they ran out of ammunition and food. They did not have anything to eat or drink. Finally, the army came to rescue them. There were about 30 soldiers in that small group. They saved these people and gave them food. However, because the soldiers controlled the food and only gave them food every day, these bastards were instigated by others to steal their guns and food. The chaotic noises and the smell of blood attracted countless zombies. In the end, whether it was soldiers or refugees, they all died in the mouths of the zombies. Gu Chuan was smart. He covered Gu Panpan's mouth and hid her in the storeroom. That was how they escaped. From that time onwards, Gu Panpan was very clear that without absolute strength, one should not save others. She could be kind and have her own bottom line, but she could not be careless and be kind. Otherwise, not only would she die, but her family and friends would also die. Therefore, although she could not bear it, Gu Panpan would only say it. She would not really do anything. The group of people handed the car over to the security guard for inspection and prepared to go in. Xiao Qing had just taken a few steps forward when Lin Qifan came up to her. His face was flushed from excitement, and his breathing was rapid. After stopping Xiao Qing for a long time, he said softly, "Ah Qing." Xiao Qing felt disgusted. She did not know how this man could be so shameless. When he cheated, did he consider that he already had a wife and children? When he allowed his mistress to kill her and little Bun, did he consider the relationship between husband and wife? Now that she was lucky to not die, this man came over with an expression as deep as the sea. What did he want? What should she do? She really wanted to slap Lin Qifan's head and make his brain splatter everywhere. Xiao Qing took a deep breath and chuckled, "Do you know me?" When she spoke, she had a smile on her face, but her eyes were cold. Yan Qiue's reaction was the fastest. He clung onto Xiao Qing's lower body like a boneless snake and rested his head on Xiao Qing's shoulder. His breath smelled like orchids and was exceptionally charming. "Ah Qing, do you know this man?" Chapter 304. Dai didn't fall behind. He clung onto Xiao Qing's other side and rubbed his face against Xiao Qing's cheek. Xiao Qing rubbed Yan Chiyue's chin with her fingertips and said lazily, "I don't know her." Lin Qifan's expression immediately turned ugly. He couldn't even hold back his smile. At this moment, the pampered girl walked over. Her eyes were filled with jealousy. "Qifan, who are you talking to now?" Lin Qifan didn't know why, but he didn't want Xiao Qing to see him and Lu Xian being so close. He couldn't help but take a step back. Lu Xian reached out her hand and didn't manage to put it on his shoulder. Lu Xian immediately became angry. However, she wasn't angry at Lin Qifan. Instead, she was angry at Xiao Qing. She raised her chin and her eyes were filled with arrogance. Her tone was full of disdain. Where did this shameless woman come from? Seducing other people's men on the street. I've never seen a living bitch before. Come, let me see. Xian air. Lin Qifan awkwardly tugged at Lu Xian's sleeve. This made her even angrier. She gritted her teeth and said, "First it's this woman, then it's that woman. Lin Qifan. Today, I want to ask you, which one is real and which one is fake? What excuses do you have to tell me?" Lin Qifan looked at the disdain in Xiao Qing's eyes and felt extremely awkward, especially when Xiao Qing leaned against Yan Chiyue. She chuckled and said, "You're right about one thing. I haven't seen a living bitch before, but I've seen one today. Let me teach you something. The man you treat like a treasure might not even be worth as much as a blade of grass in other people's eyes. No, he might not even be worth as much as a pile of shit. Especially a man like that. If you give him to me for free, I'll be disgusted." Yan Chiyue liked Xiao Qing's arrogant and cute look the most. He leaned over and kissed the corner of Xiao Qing's mouth. Then, with a coquettish glance, he said lazily, "Darling, why do you have to lower yourself to their level? They're a match made in heaven." Dai also leaned over and kissed Xiao Qing's left cheek. He nodded seriously. Although he had always hated Yan Chiyue, what he said today was still reasonable. This time, not only did Lin Qifan's face turn ugly, but Lu Xian's face also turned ugly. She came from a good family, and even after the apocalypse, she had never suffered. This was the first time someone had scolded her so directly. For a moment, she actually didn't come back to her senses. Her pale little face didn't know how to retaliate. After a long while, he said as if he had gone mad, "Tear this bitch's mouth for me." And the two men beside her. Qin Zishi had been watching from the side for a long time. Although he didn't understand the whole story, he could roughly figure it out. Xiao Qin was his friend. How could he allow others to bully her? At that time, Qin Zishi took a step forward, and Big Bear roared and slapped the two paranormals away. Big Bear's size was really scary. After slapping the two paranormals away, it stood behind Qin Zishi obediently, looking a little simple and honest. Qin Zishi looked at Lu Xian with a serious face and said coldly, "Say it again. What do you want?" At that moment, Lu Xian was close to a half-crazy state. She was so angry that her eyes turned red. She wanted to bite Xiao Qing to death. "I'm going to tear this bitch's mouth. And you guys." After saying that, she suddenly realized that Qin Zishi looked a little familiar. Then, she took a closer look at Qin Zishi, and her face turned even paler. Qin Zishi was famous in Jingdu because his father was awesome. The Qin family was a traditional family of generals. Before the apocalypse, they were very powerful in the Celestial Empire. At their peak, they had 3 commanders in one family. Chapter 305. It was as if they controlled an entire military region. The Qin family's descendants, whether they were in business, politics, or the military, were all famous. After the apocalypse, the Qin family joined forces with several powerful families to build a survivor base in the capital. In other words, the Qin family was one of the few powerful families in the capital. No matter how powerful Lu Xian's family was, they couldn't be compared to Qin Zixi family. Those who had some family background had been taught early on to look at the photos of those who could not be trifled with. Although they were foppish, they should at least have some insight. She did not expect that she would kick an iron plate. Xiao Qin looked a little tired. She said softly, "Forget it. You're finally back. Let's stop here." After saying that, she turned to look at Lu Xian. "Let go of the two people in your hands and disappear from our sight immediately." She did not say anything threatening and her expression was very cold. However, Lu Xian did not say anything. She gritted her teeth and said, "Let him go. Retreat." She then left in a hurry with her people. Lin Qifan glanced at Xiao Qing again before he turned around and left with Lu Xian. The girl was thrown to the ground. She scrambled forward and hugged her brother. Then, she burst into tears. Her brother was still hanging on by his last breath and was about to die. Xiao Qing didn't like trouble, but she was willing to help if she could. Xiao Qing took out some medicine and gave it to the girl. She patted her shoulder and didn't say anything. The girl was very grateful and kept thanking Xiao Qing. Even though she knew that she couldn't save her brother, she was still very grateful to Xiao Qing. She and her brother came to the capital from another place. Her brother had some special abilities, but she was just an ordinary person. However, her brother protected her very well. When they first came to the capital, they had no relatives. The girl met Lin Qifan by accident. Lin Qifan looked like a decent person and was good at sweet talking. He deliberately got close to the girl and helped her a lot. Naturally, she let down her guard. Lin Qifan claimed that he did not have a girlfriend and wanted to pursue the girl. The girl was a reserved girl, so she did not agree. Who knew that today, her brother had completed a mission and returned to the city. She went to the entrance to pick him up and coincidentally met Lin Qifan. The two of them had just chatted for a while when Lu Xian came over. Then, Lu Xian said that she seduced Lin Qifan. The man who swore that he didn't have a girlfriend and that he liked her didn't even dare to say a word. The girl immediately understood that Lin Qifan was trying to cheat on her, but Lu Xian found out about it. However, Lu Xian was an unreasonable person. If it wasn't for Xiao Qing, she and her brother might have died at the door. Xiao Qing helped the girl carry her brother into the city. She only left after sending them to their home. After leaving, Qin Zixi said excitedly, "Why don't you come to my house? You've taken good care of me before. Now that I'm the host, I'll do my best." Xiao Qing originally wanted to refuse, because she knew that Qin Zixi's family wasn't simple. However, when she saw the excitement in Qin Zixi's eyes and the pitiful look on the little bun's face, she agreed. Okay. Qin Zixi secretly made a "yeah" sign, then brought Xiao Qing to his house. The group of people walked and walked until they reached the exclusive residential area of the capital. Xiao Qing also understood why Lu Xian was afraid of Qin Zixi. It turned out that Qin Zixi was the son of an official. Chapter 306. However, she made friends with Qin Zixi, not his family, so she didn't care about it. As soon as Qin Zixi returned, Lan and the others dispersed in an instant. A middle-aged man who looked like a butler came over and said, "Young master, you're back. I'll go and inform." "You don't have to inform anyone. Dad and the others are very busy. Don't let them know. I'll bring my friends back to play. When Dad comes back tonight, I'll tell him." Qin Zixi waved his hand and said, Uncle Wang, I've gained a lot on this trip. They're all at the door. Help me settle them down. Don't let anyone get close. Ada and the others are very fierce. The butler said helplessly, okay, young master. Then he went out. Qin Zishi immediately led Xiao Qing and the others inside excitedly. As he walked, he said, I live with Dad and Grandpa now. My dad is very fierce, but Grandpa is very nice. He will definitely like the babies and Sister Qing very much. Xiao Qing didn't say anything. She just listened to his introduction with a smile. In front of us is our garden. My grandpa likes flowers very much. He collected a lot of seeds and planted them many times. Some of them are alive, and some of them can't be planted. But the garden is still very beautiful. As soon as Qin Zishi returned home, he became much more lively. Further ahead is our family's training ground. My dad and grandpa are both soldiers. When they have nothing to do, they like to do military boxing or exercise. They don't like to build a gym, so they built an open-air training ground. There are still a lot of equipment in it. Qin Zishi led a group of people forward. As they were walking, they suddenly saw an old man carrying a birdcage. The old man's hair and beard were white, and he was wearing a tang suit. As soon as he saw Qin Zishi, he quickly walked over. My dear grandson, I missed you so much. Come and let me see if you've lost weight. Qin Zishi hurried forward and said honestly, I'm back, Grandpa. The old man pinched Qin Zishi's arm and said in an exaggerated tone, oh, you haven't lost weight at all. You've gained so much weight. Qin Zishi's face was a little red. He had been fed by Xiao Qing and the others for the past 2 days, so he had gained more than just a little weight. He quickly changed the topic. Grandpa, I brought my friends here to play this time. Let me introduce them to you. These are my friends. Then, he introduced Xiao Qing and the others to him, with the emphasis on his little friend, Little Bun. The little Bun was a bit nervous. He raised his head to look at the old man and tried his best to make his bun face look serious. Grandpa and I am baby. The old man lowered his head and looked at Little Bun. Little Bun immediately became even more nervous. His bun-like face puffed up. The old man didn't say anything, and neither did Little Bun. It had to be said that this old man looked quite fierce, especially his eyes. When he glared, coupled with his broad forehead, heroic face, and the scar on his face, he was definitely the kind that could stop children from crying at night. The old man and the little boy looked at each other for 2 minutes. Then, the little Bun sat on the ground and began to cry. The old man's hands immediately went numb. He wanted to reach out to support the little Bun, but he was afraid that the little Bun would cry even harder. Qin Zishi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Grandpa, don't scare him. He helped Little Bun up and comforted him. Only then did Little Bun stop crying. However, he kept burrowing into his mother's arms. He looked quite frightened. The old man was a bit dispirited. Actually, he quite liked Little Bun, especially when he looked at Little Bun's chubby little face. He even wanted to poke it a few times. However, he had been disliked by children for a long time. When a child met him, 9 of them would be scared away. It wasn't easy for him to meet his grandson's little friend. He also liked him, but he had actually scared him to tears. The old man was a bit upset. Was he that scary? Qin Zishi was very familiar with his grandfather. He patted his forehead helplessly and said, "Don't stare at baby with an expressionless face. No matter how brave he is, he will still be frightened by you." Xiao Qing smiled and said, "Old man, perhaps you can try smiling." Then, the old man grinned. His already ferocious face became even scarier. Xiao Qing was speechless. Chapter 307. Noticing Xiaoqing and the others' expressions, the old man felt wronged and quickly put on a serious face. He felt hurt again. Then the little bun reached out his hand and touched the old man's waist. He wanted to touch the old man's hair because his mother often touched his head when he was sad. However, he was too short, so he could only touch the old man's waist even if he stood on tiptoe. The old man's expression didn't change, but there was joy in his eyes. He tried hard to suppress the corners of his mouth, afraid that he would scare the little bun away if he suddenly smiled. Then the old man secretly grabbed the little bun's tender hand, but the little bun didn't pull his hand away. His thoughts were simple. This was his friend's grandfather, so he had to show him some respect. Didn't he see how sad his friend's grandfather was just now? If his grandfather was sad, his friend would be sad too. After the little bun didn't pull his hand away, the old man was obviously in a much better mood. When he looked at Xiaoqing and the others again, his gaze became gentler. "Xiaoxi, are these your friends?" Qin Zishi nodded and introduced Xiaoqing and the others to the old man one by one. To be honest, the old man had never heard of Xiaoqing and the others' names. Although he didn't show any expression, it was obvious that he was listening very carefully and really remembered their names. Xiaoqing's impression of the old man improved instantly. It was obvious that the old man treated them so seriously only because they were his grandson's friends. Especially when Xiaoqing was introduced, when the old lady heard that the little bun was Xiaoqing's son, she said 2 words to Xiaoqing for the first time, "Very good." Then he said, "Don't stand at the door. Let's go in. Since we're all Xiaoxi's friends, there's no need to be shy." Then he led the way inside. Qin Zishi's house wasn't very luxurious. It was even a little low-key, but it was obvious that it had a strong foundation. In short, Xiaoqing liked this style of decoration very much. She couldn't help taking a few more glances at it. After the group of people sat down on the sofa in the living room, a nanny immediately came up to pour tea. When the old man sat down, he specifically let the little bun sit beside him and even instructed the nanny to bring some candy over. There was a big box of candies. There were chocolates, soft candies, and milk candies. In short, they were all things that children liked to eat. The old man looked at the little bun kindly and asked, "What do you like to eat? If you like them, I'll give them all to you." Little bun wasn't afraid at all, but he wasn't greedy either. He only took 2 pieces of chocolate and a piece of soft candy. Then, he looked at the soft candy man and wavered between Sun Wukong and Chang Yi. In the end, he gritted his teeth and took Sun Wukong. The little bun was too obedient. The old man immediately liked him even more. He pushed the box away. "If you like them, then take them all." Little Baozi shook his head and said softly, "Your brother Xiaoxi's grandfather, so Bao Bao won't treat you as an outsider. But one shouldn't be too greedy. This is enough for me." The old man nodded. It seemed like he wanted to laugh, but he forcefully suppressed the corners of his mouth. He was probably afraid that he would scare the little bun into crying again. One could see the upbringing of their parents by looking at their children. Therefore, the old man's impression of Xiaoqing became even better. He stood up reluctantly and said, "If I'm around, you won't be able to relax. Have fun. I'm going upstairs first." Little Baozi hesitated for a moment. Then he tugged at the old man's sleeve and said, "Grandpa, stay and play with us. I like Grandpa." Chapter 308. The old man was very happy. Although he did not show it, the excitement in his eyes was very obvious. It was the first time a child was so close to him. However, the old man still gritted his teeth and refused, "No, you will be afraid if I am here." The little bun said with a serious face, "Why should we be afraid? Just like the other children are afraid of my eyes. But I am not afraid of you at all, Grandpa. Or do you not like me?" The old man immediately felt distressed and said with a cold face, "Who is afraid of your eyes? Grandpa thinks your eyes are very cool. They are very beautiful. Then stay and play with me." The little bun immediately smiled and revealed two small canine teeth. The old man's heart immediately softened and his raised but fell back down. He muttered in his heart, Stay a little longer. You don't have to be restrained. Just treat this as your own home." After interacting for a long time, one would find that the old man was actually very kind. It was because of his face that people would think he was fierce. It could be seen from his interaction with the little bun that an old man who liked children so much could not be too hard-hearted. When a group of people sat together, they naturally chatted and drank tea. The old man's eyes were very sharp. He observed Xiaoqing for a long time and suddenly said, "You used to be soldiers." This sentence was not a question, but a statement. There was a special connection between soldiers, just like when Xiaoqing first met Yan Hanqing, she could tell that he was a soldier. "Yes, Hanqing and I were both soldiers, but I have been retired for a long time." Xiaoqing chuckled. Although after she retired, there was no arrangement for her to change her profession, which made her feel at a loss and did not know how to live in the future, she still did not regret it. She gave the best of her youth to the military. She even had a military complex that could not be untied. Even if she had been retired for a long time, even if she had struggled for a long time in the apocalypse, when she saw soldiers again, she would have a good impression of them. Most people who had been soldiers for a long time would be like this, such as her and the old man in front of her. "I can see." His gaze was gentle, as if he was reminiscing about his younger days. "Kids these days can't even endure hardships. Why did you retire from the army so early?" "I was injured during a mission, and my body couldn't keep up with the training, so I had no choice but to retire," Xiaoqing chuckled and said, "I was really young when I retired." The old man's gaze suddenly became gentler. From Xiaoqing's words, he could tell that she was not a soldier who served in the military, nor was she a soldier who could be bought with money. She was a soldier who walked on the edge of life and death. "Good, very good." The old man sighed and said, "He's a good soldier." Yan Hanqing remained silent until everyone stopped talking. Then he saluted. "Sir." The old man carefully looked at Yan Hanqing and slapped his thigh. "I know you. You're known as the Manchurian Tiger of the North China military region." Yan Hanqing did not feel anything because of the praise. He even felt that he was not qualified to say his number. But obviously, the old man remembered it very clearly. They changed from chatting casually before to talking about military life and so on. The other few people couldn't get a word in. When Qin Zixi father came back, he saw his old man with his arm around a young man's shoulder and chatting happily with another good-looking woman. Chapter 309. His jaw dropped to the ground. Was this his father, who always wore a straight face and looked like he wanted to eat someone? Was he hallucinating because he had been too busy for the past 2 days? Until Qin Zixi said crisply, "Dad, you're back." Father Qin finally reacted. Everything in front of him wasn't a hallucination. His father was really hugging a young man's shoulder and chatting with a girl. Also, there was a cute child sitting beside him. His father, who never had much luck with children, was actually sitting with a child, and the child wasn't even scared to tears. Oh my God, he just didn't come home for a day. Why did it feel like the end of the world? No, it was already the end of the world. Father Qin felt that he was already speaking incoherently. He hit his head and walked over. "Xiao Shi, you're back. Dad, you're in a good mood today." The old man immediately glared at his son. "Don't come over. Move your face away. Don't scare my baby." As he spoke, he pulled the little bun closer to his chest. Father Qin's mouth twitched. "You're always the one scaring other people's children, okay? Also, this is someone else's baby, not your baby. However, Father Qin didn't dare to complain. Although he was a powerful official to outsiders, in his own home, in his father's eyes, he would always be a child who hadn't grown up. As long as he provoked his father, he would be beaten up. Moreover, he would be beaten up on the butt, not giving him any face at all. 2 days ago, he provoked his father. Now, he didn't dare to use any strength when sitting down. What if he accidentally provoked his father again and beat him up in front of so many people? How embarrassing would that be? How would he live if word got out? Thus, Papa Qin calmly took 2 steps back and retreated to a safe distance. Then, he grinned and revealed what he thought was a very kind smile. "Father, do you think this is okay?" Then, he was hit by the old man's shoehorn. Xiao Qing's mouth twitched. Look at that smile. Was it hereditary? Fortunately, Qin Zishi wasn't like this father and son. Looking at Qin Zishi's fair and tender appearance, she probably took after her mother. Move aside. Don't embarrass yourself. After the old man scolded Father Qin, he looked at the little bun gently. What do you want to eat tonight? Grandpa will ask someone to make it for you. The little bun counted on his fingers. I want to eat sweet and sour pork ribs and winter melon soup. As he counted, he turned around and asked his mommy, Mommy, can I have a pudding after dinner tonight? Xiao Qin nodded. She usually wouldn't force little bun to eat, but she would control the amount of sweets little bun ate because eating too much sweets was bad for his teeth and body. Little bun immediately said happily, then give me a pudding. I want to eat strawberry-flavored ones. Sure, anything is fine. The old man's face was so gentle that Father Qin's eyeballs almost fell to the ground. This was his father. She had never been so gentle to him. Since they were young, they would be beaten up even more. If they were disobedient, they would be beaten up even more. If they caused trouble, they would be beaten up even more. If their grades were not good in the military academy, they would be beaten up even more. If they were in a bad mood, they would be beaten up even more. For the past few decades, other than when Qin Zishi was born, they had never smiled at him. Father Qin felt wronged. He picked up the shoehorn that his father had thrown over and had to return it. Little Bun ran over and took the shoehorn, even putting it on for his father. After all, the old man was very good to him. That was how a person should be. Mommy had said that one should repay the kindness given to them. In any case, if they were good to you, you should also be good to them. Chapter 310. The old man quickly lifted his foot. Don't, Grandpa's feet stink. The little bun was even faster and had already helped the old man put on his shoes. The old man's face was flushed, and he was so happy that it was as if the little bun was his grandson. Mr. Qin was speechless. The old man looked up and saw his useless son. He immediately shouted, "Why are you standing there like a fool? Can't you see that there are guests? Why did I give birth to such an idiot?" Mr. Qin was scolded like a wilted eggplant. The old man glared at him. "I told you not to stand there like a fool. Go to the kitchen and tell the chef that we're having sweet and sour pork ribs and winter melon soup tonight. Also, give me a... does the baby like beans? How about scrambled eggs with tomatoes?" The little bun said in a childish voice, "I can eat anything except coriander." "Grandpa, you don't have to always order what I like. I'm not picky. Just order whatever you like. Good baby. Then give me stir-fried green beans and scrambled eggs with tomatoes. Leave the rest to the chef. Don't forget to make dessert too. I want strawberry-flavored pudding." The old man waved his hand. Mr. Qin felt that he had been reduced to a housekeeper. He felt wronged. "Hurry up." The old man glared at him. "I always thought that you couldn't think straight. Now that I see it, you're really stupid. Mr. Qin was defeated. The old man was in a very good mood. This good mood lasted until dinner. During dinner, the little bun sat beside him. He kept putting food in the little bun's bowl. He was even more considerate than Xiao Qing, the little bun's mother. The little bun would also put food in his bowl. Those who didn't know would definitely think that the little bun was the old man's grandson. Even Qin Zishi was ignored. Thus, Qin Zishi and Mr. Qin formed a pitiful father-son team. One was ignored by his father, and the other was ignored by his grandfather. After dinner, the little bun sat at the side and ate the pudding contentedly. The old man then asked Xiao Qing, "You're not from the capital, right?" Xiao Qing nodded. "We're from the survivor base in S City." "So, did you come to the capital to take a look, or what?" If it was someone else, he would definitely not ask this question. The old man's position in the Celestial Empire was unshakable. There were not many people who could make him pay attention to them, especially the younger generation, which was even rarer. It was because of the little bun and the fact that Xiao Qing was to his liking that he asked a few more questions. "Originally, I just wanted to come over and take a look. I also have the idea of settling down here, but I haven't decided yet." Xiao Qing didn't say too much. She understood what the old man meant. If they wanted to settle down, the old man would definitely help them. Xiao Qing really didn't want to owe others too much. If Qin Zishi wanted to help her, she definitely wouldn't say anything, but if Qin Zishi's grandfather wanted to help her, it wasn't the same concept. The old man could also see Xiao Qing's thoughts, so he didn't ask much. He only said, "Well, settling down here is not bad. You can stay at our house tonight. It's quite late now, and it's troublesome to find a place to stay. There are quite a lot of rooms at home, so it won't be a problem for the few of you to stay." Xiao Qing didn't plan to refuse. The old man immediately said, "Let the baby sleep with me tonight. Is that okay, baby?" "Okay." The little bun blinked and immediately said, "Well, if Grandpa likes me, he won't object to me being good friends with Brother Xiaoxi, right? Grandpa, why don't you, Brother Xiaoxi, and I sleep together?" The old man thought about it. Anyway, the bed was quite big, and he didn't lack a grandson. He nodded and then looked at Xiao Qing. An old man with white hair and beard looked at you with expectant eyes. No one could say no. Xiao Qing could only say, "Don't trouble Grandpa." "I know, Mama," the little bun said obediently. Then, the old man held his grandson's hand in his left hand and the little bun's hand in his right hand. With the feeling of a winner in life, they went upstairs to sleep. Father Qin was left to arrange a place for Xiao Qing and the others to stay. Father Qin was quite cold to Xiao Qing. He arranged for the housekeeper to make arrangements for them. Xiao Qing slept in the same room as the two octopuses she brought. Yes, the two octopuses crawled over in the middle of the night. When the two of them went over, it was already the middle of the night. Normal people would be asleep at this time, but Xiao Qing wasn't. She leaned on the bed and looked at the ceiling. Yan Qiue was the first to go over. He organized his words and said, "Are you still thinking about the man you met today?" "Humph, what's there to think about that kind of gigolo? Look, the two of us are enough." Dai agreed and leaned over. "That's right, what's so good about that kind of gigolo?" Xiao Qing sighed and said, "How did you know I was thinking about him?" "Do you even need to ask? You definitely know each other. Just by looking at the way he looks at you, I know that he has feelings for you, humph." Yan Qiue whispered, "He definitely has feelings for you." Xiao Qing smiled and said, "Then do you want to guess what I'm thinking about? Are you thinking about your past?" Yan Qiue widened his eyes and said, "I think there must be something between you two." Xiao Qing said indifferently, "You're half right. Am I right that you're thinking about your past, or that there's something between you two?" In fact, Yan Qiue appeared to be jealous, but he knew in his heart that Xiao Qing's old man's eyes were definitely not gentle. He just saw that Xiao Qin was in a bad mood and deliberately made her happy. Xiao Qin said, the second half of the sentence. Yan Qiue immediately went over and said coquettishly, that's already the past. You have to look forward. Look at your side. With someone as handsome as me, why are you still thinking about him? I'm thinking about how to kill him. Xiao Qin said very seriously, I've already thought of dozens of ways to die. Do you want to help me? Yan Qiue was speechless. Chapter 311. Although Yan Qiue had been a little jealous before, he just wanted to shrink his head back because he had heard Xiao Qin's cold words clearly. She was telling the truth. She was indeed thinking about how to kill Lin Qifan, and she had thought of more than one method. But who was Yan Qiue? He had an unscrupulous personality. If Xiao Qin killed someone, he would pass the knife to her. If Xiao Qin was tired, he would take the knife and help her kill for a while. He didn't care who Xiao Qin wanted to kill, whether it was a powerful paranormal, an innocent person, or a big boss. As long as Xiao Qin wanted to kill someone, he would help without hesitation. Perhaps in many people's eyes, Yan Qiue's personality was very dangerous and creepy, but Xiao Qin liked it. She liked this part of him. What was the purpose of a person's life? Others didn't know, but Xiao Qin only wanted the people she cared about to live a better life. As long as she could live a better life, it was enough. Especially in this post-apocalyptic world, if she didn't take advantage of the current situation, when would she have the chance? Perhaps she would lose her head tomorrow. She was most afraid of being betrayed, but Yan Qiue wouldn't betray her. His extreme fanaticism, his extreme love for her, and his extreme personality were the reasons why Xiao Qin trusted him so much. Even Yan Hanqing's trust in Xiao Qin was slightly lower than Yan Qiue's. There was also Dai. Dai wasn't a human, and he relied on Xiao Qin to the extreme. It could be said that Dai was the person Xiao Qin trusted the most. So while Xiao Qin was thinking about how to kill Lin Qifan, the two of them were already thinking about how to help Xiao Qin kill him. They didn't even need to ask why Xiao Qin wanted to kill Lin Qifan, because if Xiao Qin wanted Lin Qifan dead, they would kill Lin Qifan. Xiao Qin understood this clearly, but she didn't want to hide it from the two men, so Xiao Qin said calmly, Lin Qifan is the baby's biological father. The two men were stunned. In the past, when people asked Xiao Qin who the baby's biological father was, Xiao Qin would either smile and say that the baby's biological father was dead. They didn't expect that the dead baby's father would appear again. Lin Qifan was my husband. Lin Qifan was my husband. We were married and registered, but I didn't know that he cheated on me. I didn't know until the day of the apocalypse when his mistress killed me while I was pregnant. Only then did I know that I was quite unfortunate, but also very lucky. Coincidentally, the apocalypse happened. Perhaps it was because I was infected with the zombie virus and awakened my superpower a second before I breathed my last. That's why I didn't die. I crawled out of the hospital freezer and gave birth to the baby, turning into a half-human, half-zombie monster. Xiao Qin's tone was very calm. At the beginning of the apocalypse, she was angry and extreme. She only thought about revenge, and her entire being was consumed by bloodthirsty thoughts. But now, when that person was mentioned again, she didn't have any emotions. Her heart was as calm as a windless lake. It was probably because Dai and the others had healed the wound in her heart. Although Xiao Qin spoke very calmly, the two men were about to go crazy. How could there be such a man in this world? He clearly already had the best treasure in the world, but he insisted on abandoning it like a shoe and picking up some trash. Although they were glad that the man was blind and didn't recognize the real treasure, they felt even more sorry for Xiao Qin. She was betrayed by her own husband, killed by a mistress, and was pregnant when she died. Chapter 312. Xiao Qin must have been very sad and desperate at that time. Now, even without Xiaoqing, the two of them wanted to tear that idiot apart. Especially Yan Qiue, he wanted to bang his head against the wall. Seriously, how could there be such an idiot in this world? If he had Xiaoqing and Xiaoqing was willing to give birth to his child, he would have been overjoyed. He would be willing to shorten his life by 10 years. But this man, not only did he not cherish Xiaoqing, he even left her behind to find another woman. He must be an idiot. How could such a lucky man not be him? Moreover, it was all because of this idiot that Xiaoqing was unwilling to accept another man as her lover. It made his pursuit of her difficult and long. Alright, let's go to sleep. Anyway, he's in the capital. If you want to kill him, you can do it any time. I'm not in a hurry at all, Xiaoqing said calmly. She had to think of a unique way to kill him. She had to think of a way to kill Lin Qifan. Xiaoqing felt very uncomfortable if she did not look at him and feel the despair she felt back then. The two men closed their eyes obediently. In fact, they were thinking about how to torture Lin Qifan. In fact, killing a person was not the best choice for revenge. Making him beg for death was more satisfying. Especially for this kind of idiot. Wouldn't it be too easy for him to die too quickly? Early the next morning, the two men got out of bed and went back to their rooms. Then, they pretended to have just woken up and came out of their rooms. Who didn't know what they were trying to do? Who didn't know where they slept last night? Father Qin ran away early, probably to hide from the old man. Xiaoqing stretched and went downstairs lazily. As soon as she came downstairs, she saw a rich lady sitting on the first floor. The noblewoman was drinking tea. Her clothes and appearance were top-notch. Xiaoqing was stunned. The noblewoman was also stunned. She narrowed her eyes and looked at Xiaoqing warily. Xiaoqing didn't know her, but judging from her age, she should be in her 30s. Naturally, she had to be polite in someone else's house. Xiaoqing said, "Madam, I'm Qin Zishi's friend." "Oh, so you are little Xi's friend." The woman narrowed her eyes, but the vigilance in her eyes did not disappear. She smiled and said, "I'm Xi's mother." "So it's..." Xiaoqing was stunned for a moment and couldn't say the word auntie. After all, the age gap between her and this woman wasn't that big. Counting carefully, she was 28 years old this year and was almost 30 years old. At this time, little Baozi ran down, followed by Qin Zishi and the old man. Little Baozi ran over first and jumped into Xiaoqing's arms. Then, he gave Xiaoqing a morning kiss. "Good morning, Mama." Xiaoqing's eyes softened. She touched little Baozi's head and said, "How did you sleep last night? Were you naughty?" "I slept very well. I just missed Mama a little." Little Baozi pouted and said coquettishly, "I was very obedient. I wasn't naughty at all." "That's good." Xiaoqing said, call her auntie." Little Baozi turned to look at the woman and said softly, "Hello, auntie." The woman's vigilance almost overflowed. She pursed her lips and smiled. "What a cute baby." She stood up and walked over. First, she touched Qin Zishi's head lovingly. Then, she smiled and said, "Daddy, you look so good today." The old man's face was cold and expressionless. Then, he said, "That's enough. There are no outsiders here. There's no need for formalities. Tell them to eat breakfast. The baby should be hungry." Chapter 313. The woman lowered her head slightly. Her eyes were filled with confusion. She was Qin Zishi's stepmother. Qin Zishi's mother had passed away when she gave birth to him. Mr. Qin was worried that a child without a mother would go astray, so he remarried and married Mrs. Qin. However, Qin Zishi didn't like her stepmother. After marrying Mr. Qin, Mrs. Qin hadn't been able to give birth. She had gone to the hospital for a checkup and found nothing wrong with her body. There were only two possibilities. Either there was something wrong with Mr. Qin's body, or he didn't want her to give birth. The answer was obvious. If there was something wrong with Mr. Qin's body, how did Qin Zishi give birth to him? It was obvious that Mr. Qin didn't want her to give birth to the heir of the Qin family, or he was worried that after she gave birth to the child of the Qin family, the child would compete with Qin Zishi for the Qin family. Therefore, Mrs. Qin had been brooding. Now, there was a woman who was very good-looking and had a child. More importantly, she seemed to be liked by Qin Zishi and the old man. How could Mrs. Qin not be vigilant? She looked at the little bun carefully, but the little bun looked like Xiao Qin. She couldn't tell if the little bun was related to Mr. Qin. After looking for a while, Mrs. Qin smiled and said, "I'll go tell the chef now." After Mrs. Qin left, the old man took the baby and Qin Zishi to sit on the sofa. The housekeeper came up and poured some tea. "How many days do you plan to stay?" The old man took a sip of tea and asked in a low voice. "We're leaving today. There are people waiting for us at home in S City." Xiao Qin chuckled and said, "We've been away for a long time this time." The old man obviously couldn't bear to part with the little bun, so he asked tentatively, "Why don't you stay for one more day? Today, Xiao Shi will take you around the capital city. It's not easy to come here." Xiao Qin thought about it. One more day wasn't a bad idea. Besides, the little bun probably wanted to spend more time with Qin Zishi. She didn't know when they would meet again, so she nodded and agreed. The old man's brows immediately relaxed, and then he said, "Little Shi, take little Qin and the others to walk around today. Take a look at all the fun and delicious places. I'm already old, and I don't know where is suitable for you young people." Qin Zishi had always been very obedient in front of the old man. "Okay, Grandpa, I will." The woman soon returned and gracefully walked to the side of the sofa. Then, she raised her hand and poured a cup of tea for everyone. Then, she said, "How should I address you?" The little bun said seriously, "Auntie, my mother's name is Xiao Qin." Xiao means Xiao, and Qin means Qin. His description made Qin Zishi laugh. Who would introduce someone with the words, "Little bun is the only one who has the feelings of a lover"? The woman was clearly a little confused by the little bun's unexpected behavior. She forced a smile and said, "It's a very nice name. Can I call you Xiao Qin? If you don't mind, you can call me Sister Shui." Xiao Qin naturally wouldn't embarrass her. She called out softly, "Sister Shui." "Xiao Qin, this is your first time in the capital, right?" the woman asked. "Yes." Xiao Qin said dryly. She couldn't get used to the sudden enthusiasm, especially when it wasn't pure. "Huh, Xiao Qin, where are you from? The capital city is very big and prosperous. Since you have nothing to do these 2 days, why don't we go out and have a look?" the woman said enthusiastically. Xiao Qin held the cup and said expressionlessly, "I'm from the survivor base in S City. But I won't bother you. I'll go out with Xiao Shi and the others." Chapter 314. Don't be so courteous with Sister Shui. We're all friends. Before the woman could finish, Qin Zishi interrupted her expressionlessly. "All right, stop pretending to be a good person here. I'll take Sister Qin out for a walk." The woman's expression was a little ugly. After a while, she recovered. "Lil Shi, what are you saying? Don't you understand what I'm saying?" Qin Zishi's expression was cold, not giving her any face. "I said, I don't need your fake kindness. I'll take my friends out for a walk. Do you understand?" The old man coughed and said, "Lil Shi, how can you talk to your mother like that?" "Who's my mother?" "My mother is downstairs. She doesn't deserve to be my mother." With that, Qin Zishi pushed the teacup away and walked out. When the little bun saw this, he quickly jumped down from Xiao Qin's arms and ran after Qin Zishi, leaving the three adults behind. The atmosphere was extremely awkward. After a long time, the old man said calmly, "Xiao Shui, Lil Shi's temper is like that. Don't take it to heart." Although he said that, he didn't blame Qin Zishi in his eyes. Clearly, he didn't like this daughter-in-law very much. However, no matter how much he disliked her, he still had to give her face because she was Papa Qin's daughter-in-law. She was his daughter-in-law. Since she had entered his family, he had to give her the respect she deserved. "Father, why would I blame Lil Shi? Sigh. His temper needs to be changed." The woman quickly recovered and said to Xiao Qing apologetically, "I'm sorry, little Qing. I made a fool of myself." Xiao Qing quickly shook her head and held the teacup, not saying a word. The richer the family, the more complicated it was. Previously, she was thinking of finding a stepfather for the little bun. After all, it wasn't good for the baby to be fatherless. But now, she was starting to waver. Was it really good to find a stepfather? If the little bun was like Lil Shi and didn't have a good life, then she might as well not find a stepfather and let her son be bullied for no reason. The old man at the side also said, "Xiao Qing, we've really embarrassed ourselves in front of you this time. Lil Shi's temper is too rash. Just this point alone makes me very worried." Xiao Qing didn't say anything and only smiled. She also felt that the atmosphere was extremely awkward and couldn't sit still. Fortunately, Yan Qiue and the others had come down at this moment. The old man stood up and said, "I'll go look for little Shi. You young people should sit together and chat. I won't interfere. I'll go." Xiao Qing, who was eager to get rid of this awkward situation, volunteered. The second person who volunteered was the woman. However, the old man waved his hand and said, "I'm not that old that I can't walk. You guys sit down. I'll just take it as a walk." After the old man left, the atmosphere didn't ease up at all because there was nothing to talk about. It was only when Yan Qiue and the others walked over that Yan Qiue was like an octopus. The moment she came over, she occupied the seat on Xiao Qing's left. It was as though she had no bones as she leaned on Xiao Qing's body softly. Dummy immediately sat on the right side of Xiao Qing, which made the woman stunned. She looked up and saw all kinds of handsome men, including those who were cold and ascetic, those who were handsome and strong, those who were enchanting and charming, and those who were cute and handsome. None of them looked bad. They directly surrounded Xiao Qing. Her jaw was about to hit the ground. Xiao Qing pushed Yan Qiue and frowned. "Don't you have any bones? Sit up. Why are you leaning on me?" Yan Qiue acted coquettishly and leaned closer. "Let me lean on you. Why don't you dislike air dye?" Xiao Qing was helpless against this man who was always jealous. She poked Yan Qiue and said embarrassedly, "They have such bad tempers. I'm sorry." Chapter 315. The woman's hostility immediately vanished. She finally understood that she had been wrong. How could Xiao Qing have an affair with Papa Qin? Judging by the looks of the men around her, Xiao Qing would never fall for Papa Qin. It wasn't that Papa Qin was ugly. He could be considered handsome, but compared to these men, he was a far cry. Then the little bun definitely wasn't Papa Qin's child and wouldn't fight with her for Papa Qin. The woman immediately relaxed. Her enthusiasm this time was really pure. "You guys are all true," she couldn't help but chuckle to herself. After Qin Zishi was found, his expression was still very ugly, but he didn't provoke the woman again. The atmosphere was still a little awkward. After finishing the meal, the old man waved his hand. "You can go out and play, but there's a limit. Come back early." Qin Zishi left with the group. He really didn't want to see that woman again. Ever since he could remember, he had fallen out with Papa Qin many times because of this woman. He didn't have a mother. His mother had passed away. This woman had nothing to do with him. Qin Zishi had once fought with Papa Qin because he forced him to call her mother. That time, Papa Qin's face was almost disfigured. Although they were already out, Qin Zishi was still in a bad mood. The little bun didn't know how to comfort his little friend, so he looked at Xiao Qin for help. Xiao Qin gently patted Qin Zishi's back and said, "Why are you angry?" "I hate her. I hate her appearing in my house. My father clearly said that he loved my mother. Then why did he marry another woman after my mother passed away?" Qin Zishi's eyes were red. She was very puzzled. Since he was very young, many people had told him that his father and mother were very much in love. However, his father, who said that he loved his mother, married another woman 2 years after his mother passed away. Wasn't this a joke? Could this so-called love only last for 2 years? Xiao Qin patted Qin Zishi's head. Adults and children think differently. Perhaps your father really loved your mother, but the dead are gone. We have to think of the living. Even I have considered finding a stepfather for the baby many times. After Xiao Qin said this, many people pricked up their ears, especially Yan Qiue. She was completely focused on what she was going to say. Why? Because the books say that children who grow up without a father easily lose their father's love. When they grow up, they will easily go astray. Xiao Qin chuckled and said, "I want my child to grow up healthy. I don't want him to be criticized because he doesn't have a father. I want to give him a complete family and a happy childhood. I think your father would think the same." Qin Zishi sneered, then whispered, "Someone like him, wouldn't." Seeing that Qin Zishi was a little convinced, Little Bun quickly comforted his little friend and diverted his attention. "Brother Xiaoxi, don't be sad. Play with the baby." He picked up Yiya and threw a ball out. He said to Yiya, "Go and pick it up." Yiya, who was forced to become a dog, had no choice but to run all the way out while whimpering. Then, he picked up the ball. The ball rolled and rolled until it reached a person's feet. Yiya had just picked up the ball when he was picked up by someone. Oh my God, what a cute rabbit. But why only 1 ear? Little Bun saw that Yiya had been picked up by someone else. He quickly ran over and tiptoed. "Sister, can you return Yiya to me?" The girl raised her eyebrows. "This is your rabbit?" Little Bun nodded. "Yes, yes." Then, he felt a very strange gaze looking at him. Little Bun turned his head in confusion and saw a man looking at him with a very complicated gaze. Little Bowsy didn't want to stay any longer, so the girl returned the rabbit to him. He ran back with the rabbit in his arms and into his mother's embrace. Then, he whispered, "Mama, there's a strange uncle who keeps looking at me." Xiao Qin looked up and couldn't help but sneer. What was that saying again? Enemies are bound to meet on a narrow road. Chapter 316. The little Bun was delicate and pretty. His features were very similar to Xiao Qin's, but there was a slight resemblance between him and Lin Qifan. Lin Qifan was stunned. He suddenly remembered that at the very beginning, he and Xiao Qin were still very loving. At that time, he would often listen quietly through Xiao Qin's belly. It was like he could hear the baby moving inside. Every now and then, the baby would kick him. The excitement in his heart couldn't help but overflow. That was his first child. He would look a lot like him and Xiao Qin. He would call him Daddy and Mommy Mommy. Later on, when he and Fu Jinling fell out, he thought about giving up on Fu Jinling and giving up on the easy promotion. But he couldn't do it. He was a child from a poor family. It wasn't easy for him to get into a famous university. After struggling his way out of a small mountain village, he had enough of living in poverty. So, whenever he had the chance to climb up the ladder, he would rather die than give it up. During that period of time, he was often in a daze. On one hand, he felt the guilt of betrayal, and on the other, he felt the thrill of a promotion. Fu Jinling didn't have any siblings. In other words, as long as he married Fu Jinling and waited for her father to pass away, the company would be in his hands. So, as soon as Fu Jinling expressed her interest in him, he immediately climbed up the ladder. The huge temptation made him forget about his wife at home and the difficult days he had with Xiaoqing. He hid Xiaoqing's existence from Fu Jinling and was sweet with her. Until Xiaoqing was exposed. Fu Jinling argued with him and asked him to divorce her. As he agreed, he didn't want to give up on Xiaoqing. Lin Qifan once thought that perhaps he could divorce Xiaoqing and use sweet words to bewitch her into becoming his secret lover. Then, he would have both wealth and beauty in his arms. However, Lin Qifan was well aware that Xiaoqing was a very proud person. In fact, she wasn't a simple person. The first time he met Xiaoqing, it was when Xiaoqing was injured. Her injury was a gunshot wound. Although Lin Qifan still didn't know Xiaoqing's true identity after their marriage, he was sure of one thing: Xiaoqing had a strong personality. If she found out he had cheated on her, she would rather die than be his secret lover. Just the thought of Xiaoqing leaving him and perhaps becoming another man's wife, making Lin Qifan's jealousy. The jealousy in his heart was like a thick venom, slowly fermenting it. Therefore, when he found out that Fu Jinling wanted to deal with Xiaoqing, he didn't stop Fu Jinling. What he couldn't have, why should he let someone else have it? If Fu Jinling killed Xiaoqing, it would be killing two birds with one stone. He wouldn't have to worry about Xiaoqing divorcing him and marrying another man. Moreover, he would have something on Fu Jinling. Even if she didn't like him in the future, she wouldn't dare to leave him. As for children, even if he lost them, he could always have another one. However, when the news of Xiaoqing's death came, Lin Qifan regretted it. He felt that he was too infatuated. Whenever he thought of the time he spent with Xiaoqing, his heart would ache. However, what did he see now? He saw a child who called Xiaoqing mother. Moreover, that child looked similar to him. Was that his child? Lin Qifan was ecstatic. After the apocalypse, he didn't have any superpowers, so he could only go with the flow. Fortunately, he had a good appearance, so many capable or powerful women were interested in him. That was how he managed to survive. However, those who were interested in him weren't first-rate people. Therefore, he still had to keep a low profile and rely on others. Chapter 317. Until now, he had been wandering between many women. While relying on women to survive, he looked down on those women who kept him as their mistresses. Especially yesterday, Lu Xian avoided Qin Zishi like a snake and was extremely afraid. After returning home, Lu Xian explained to him who Qin Zishi was. He was one of the top 3 young masters in the capital. However, this young master was clearly very close to Xiaoqing, so Lin Qifan had other thoughts. He felt that he could let Xiaoqing return to his side. He still loved Xiaoqing the most, and presumably, Xiaoqing was the same. Moreover, Xiaoqing didn't know the truth back then. At most, she would push all the blame to Fu Jinling. If he said a few good words to Xiaoqing, she would definitely forgive him. In the past, when he occasionally did something wrong, as long as he said some gentle words, Xiaoqing would forgive him. Now, it would definitely be the same. Xiaoqing must have been cold to him because she was still angry. It would be fine once her anger subsided. Moreover, now, there was a little bun. Looking at the age, it didn't match. Even if Xiaoqing didn't die at that time and gave birth to a child, it definitely couldn't be this old. Similarly, it was impossible for her to give birth to a child for someone else, so there was only one possibility, and that was that this child was adopted by Xiaoqing. She probably had a miscarriage, so she adopted a child to comfort herself. However, when Xiaoqing adopted a child, she chose a child who was 70% similar to Xiaoqing and 30% similar to him. Didn't this fully prove that Xiao Qing still had him in her heart? Therefore, Lin Qifan was very confident. He adjusted his expression to make himself look melancholic and affectionate. Then, he walked toward Xiao Qing. "Ah Qing, are you still angry with me? I don't know anything. She was the one who kept sticking to me. I didn't expect her to harm you. Ah Qing, come back to me, okay? I will." As soon as he approached, he was stopped by Xiao Tong's mental barrier before he could finish speaking. Yan Qiue casually waved her hand, and a stream of air hit Lin Qifan's chest, forcing him to take a few steps back and sit on the ground. Yan Qiue lifted her chin and looked at Lin Qifan with contempt as if she was looking at a piece of trash. She said sarcastically, "Who do you think you are? How dare you spout nonsense? Is Ah Qing someone you can call? Why are you angry with him? My heart will ache." The corners of Xiao Qing's lips curled up, and her eyes softened. Although this man was disgusting, it didn't stop people who were good to her from protecting her. Yan Qiue was teased by Xiao Qing's words. She immediately changed from being mean to Xiao Qing to being gentle. "Then let's ignore him. We were in a good mood when we went out shopping, but it was all ruined by him." Lin Qifan's heart was filled with hatred, but his expression was even more affectionate. With a pale face, he lowered his voice and said, "Ah Qing, are you not willing to forgive me?" At this time, the young girl who was accompanying him walked over with an ugly expression. This young girl was not the Lu Xian from yesterday. She looked slightly older than Lu Xian. The only similarity was that she had a face full of arrogance. "Lin Qifan, what are you doing? Who is this woman?" The young woman's face was filled with anger. When she looked at Xiao Qing again, her eyes were filled with murderous intent. It wasn't that she loved Lin Qifan that much. It was just that subconsciously, Lin Qifan had been classified as her private property. Now, this private property had applied for and confessed to another woman. It would be strange if she was happy about it. Lin Qifan didn't want to offend this young woman, but he knew very well that if he didn't act decisively and show Xiao Qing his sincerity, it would be impossible for him and Xiao Qing to be together. Chapter 318. Hence, Lin Qifan gritted his teeth and said, "That's my wife, my lover." "Lin Qifan. Do you know what you're saying?" The girl was stunned. When Lin Qifan was with her, he had always been obedient. This was the first time he had gone against her wishes. However, Yan Qiue was still laughing by the side. "Ah Qing, is this person stupid? How shameless is he to think that a person he sees is his wife? He's probably crazy." Xiao Qing's anger inexplicably dissipated. She didn't hate Lin Qifan, so why would she hate an ant? No, it was trash that couldn't even be considered an ant. As long as she wanted to, killing Lin Qifan would be an easy task. However, she didn't want to kill Lin Qifan so easily, so she was happy to watch the show. It was rare to see such a dog-eat-dog show. Lin Qifan gritted his teeth and said, "Ah Qing, I'm your Qifan. Have you forgotten? Ah Qing, it's all my fault. Now that I know I was wrong, I want to repent. Can you give me a chance to make it up to you? Let's start over. I'll definitely treat you well. Lin Qifan. Say that one more fucking word." The girl completely exploded. She felt as though she had been slapped in the face. It was as though she had raised a dog and the dog had bitten her in return. She couldn't tolerate not being angry. She couldn't tolerate not being angry. Lin Qifan didn't say anything. He only looked at Xiao Qing with an affectionate and gentle gaze. However, he could only throw those flirtatious glances at a blind person because Xiao Qing couldn't even be bothered to look at him. The girl angrily went forward and kicked Lin Qifan to the ground. She said coldly, "Lin Qifan, you better remember what you said today. Don't regret it. After saying that, she looked at Xiao Qing with a sinister gaze. And you? Let me tell you, this is the capital. It's not a place where an outsider like you can be arrogant. You can take this cheap man if you want. After all, he's a piece of trash that has been toyed with. However, I can't take this lying down. Do you have the guts to tell me your name? Qin Zishi furrowed his brows. He had brought his little friends out to play. How did they end up in such a situation? But before he could do anything, he was stopped by Gu Panpan. Gu Panpan whispered, "Just leave it to Sister Qin." Qin Zishi nodded and continued to watch the show from the back. When Xiao Qing heard this, she laughed and said lazily, "Do you think I'm a garbage collector? Don't be afraid. I wouldn't want a man like this even if you offered him to me. The capital is quite big. I'm just a country bumpkin, but I have a good upbringing. I'm Xiao Qing. If you want to take revenge on me, feel free to do so." She originally thought that the girl would lose her patience and rush forward. She didn't expect the girl to be so patient. After saying those harsh words, she left without even looking at Lin Qifan. Xiao Qing didn't want to kill Lin Qifan today, so after glancing at him, she prepared to leave. How could Lin Qifan let Xiao Qing leave? He had an idea and prepared to pounce on Xiao Qing and hug her thigh. Then, he would say some sweet nothings and apologize. Perhaps he could change Xiao Qing's mind. However, as soon as he pounced over, he was kicked away by Dumbo before he could hold his thigh. His chin was almost broken by the kick. Yan Qiue was still laughing. Dai, you didn't use too much strength. Did you not eat last night? Lin Qifan lay on the floor in disbelief. How could Xiao Qing allow someone to hit him? In the past, Xiao Qing's heart would ache whenever he scratched his skin. Because of one incident where he knocked his forehead on the corner of a table, Xiao Qing put protective covers on all the corners of the furniture in the house. Chapter 319. She was so nice to him at that time. How could such a gentle Xiao Qing allow others to hit him? He must be dreaming. Don't dirty your feet. Xiao Qing patted Dai's head and walked away without looking at Lin Qifan. Lin Qifan reached out a hand and tried to grab Xiao Qing's trousers, but Gu Panpan kicked him away. He was at a loss for a long time. Only when everyone was far away did he raise his head and look at Xiao Qing's back and little bun, who was peeking out from Xiao Qing's shoulder to peek at him. Lin Qifan suddenly felt an indescribable heartache and anger. Why didn't she forgive him? He wasn't the one who hit her. It was Fu Jinling. Why didn't she forgive him? He still loved Xiao Qing. He loved her so much. Why were there so many men by her side? Did she betray him? Lin Qifan's heart was filled with all kinds of doubts. The strange feeling in his heart brewed and turned into embarrassment and anger. In his heart, Xiao Qing was his woman, but another man appeared by her side and acted intimately with that man. This was betrayal. Shouldn't Xiao Qing keep her chastity for him? Also, those men humiliated him like that. Lin Qifan was angry and jealous. His eyes were dark as he looked in the direction Xiao Qing left and kept scheming. He would make Xiao Qing fall in love with him again. He would make her become the gentle Xiao Qing who gave him what he wanted. When the time came, he would kill those men bit by bit. He couldn't help but fantasize about the pleasure of conquering a woman like Xiao Qing. This was something that other women couldn't give him. He secretly calculated in his heart. If he couldn't find a breakthrough with Xiao Qing, then he would start with Little Bun. Little Baozi was still young and easy to fool. Naturally, he would listen to whatever he said. After getting Little Baozi under control, he could use Little Baozi to move and persuade Xiao Qing. On the other side, Xiao Qing, who had already walked far away, was in a good mood. When she looked at Lin Qifan again, it was as if she was looking at a monkey performing acrobatics. However, this monkey's acting skills were very clumsy. Other than wanting to laugh, she did not feel anything else. Xiao Qing even wondered if water had entered her brain back then to have fallen in love with Lin Qifan, a good-for-nothing man with a human face but a beast heart who was extremely fake. She must be out of her mind. That's why she was fooled by such a man and almost killed her poor son. When she thought back to those sweet days, Xiao Qing felt that she was hopelessly stupid. Lin Qifan's performance was so obvious. Other than sweet words, he didn't have much sincerity, but she still fell for it. Xiao Qing wasn't unhappy, but Yan Qiue thought that she was feeling bad. She moved closer to Xiao Qing and comforted her softly. "Ah Qing, why didn't you let me kill him just now?" "Kill him for what?" "Kill him on the spot." Xiao Qing raised her eyebrows and said calmly, "I want him to live." Yan Qiue couldn't help but frown. "Ah Qing, were you moved by his words? And your heart softened? You don't want to kill him anymore?" Xiao Qing was amused. "Do you think that's possible?" "Qiyu, death isn't the scariest thing for humans. What's so scary about death? It's just closing one's eyes. He won't feel anything else. Even if you whip his corpse, he won't feel any pain. How boring is that? Sometimes, being alive was scarier than being dead. It was more painful than being dead." Yan Qiue naturally understood. He rubbed his chin and said, then, "Ah Qing, what do you want to do?" "I don't need to do anything now. Someone will do it for me." Xiao Qing blinked her eyes. "Don't forget about the girl who said those harsh words just now. You should be able to tell that she's a very arrogant woman. After being humiliated by Lin Qifan, do you think she'll let it go?" Yan Qiue nodded. "Definitely not. With her personality, she'll probably torture Lin Qifan as much as she can. Let him suffer for 2 days, and then Lin Qifan will come to me himself. I'm familiar with his personality. He won't give up. He'll think of other ways to move me. Life is so boring. Why give up on the fun that comes to me?" Xiao Qing smiled, but her eyes were cold. What did Lin Qifan desire his entire life? He craved wealth and power. Then she would make him lose everything. She would make him feel despair and pain. She would make him unable to die even if he wanted to. Otherwise, how could she live up to her and Little Bun's current state? Qin Zishi didn't know anything, but it wasn't hard to tell that Lin Qifan and Xiao Qing had a close relationship. He wasn't stupid. From the conversation between Lin Qifan and Xiao Qing, he could more or less figure out what was going on. Lin Qifan said that he was Xiao Qing's husband. Most likely, Lin Qifan had cheated on Xiao Qing. Now, he wanted to put on a show of a prodigal son turning over a new leaf in exchange for Xiao Qing's change of heart. There was definitely more to it, but it was definitely Lin Qifan's fault. Judging from the two's attitudes, it was obvious. People usually sided with their loved ones. Besides, the truth was on Xiao Qing's side. Qin Zishi immediately leaned over and asked in a low voice, "Is there anything I can help you with?" Then, he patted his chest. "If there's anything, just say it. There are things I don't dare to say. In the capital, it's fine if I can't do it. If there's anything I need, I'll definitely tell you." Xiao Qing smiled. When she turned around, she saw everyone's concerned faces. Everyone's eyes were filled with deep worry. The remaining tyranny in her heart slowly dissipated. Perhaps she had suffered a lot in the past. She had no parents when she was young and was all alone. Later on, she met such a scum and almost lost her life. It could be said that the heavens were very unfair to her. However, all those hardships were exchanged for everything she had today. Xiao Qing felt that it was worth it. Chapter 320. The few of them played outside for a day. On the way back, they passed by the martial arts practice field and actually met an acquaintance. This acquaintance was none other than the leader of the Dark Thorns, Zhu Machin. At this moment, he was sparring with someone on the martial arts practice field. His ability to control metal with one hand was superb. His ability was to control metal, mainly to soften, harden, and detonate it. Usually, when fighting, he could throw the hidden weapons he carried with him. At the critical moment, these hidden weapons would become bombs. This was his main fighting method, but the battle in front of him was obviously just a spar. He couldn't attack too heavily, so he didn't use his killing move. Xiao Qing and the others were already preparing to go back, but seeing this, they couldn't stop and prepared to watch. There were only two people on Zhu Machin's side. One was a girl with a ponytail, dressed very smart, with a lollipop in her mouth and a machine gun on her shoulder. The other was also an acquaintance of Xiao Qing. It was Qing Guanyin, who she saved in the vertical forest survival base. He was also Zhu Machin's cousin. There were more people confronting them. At the front was a middle-aged man with a somewhat sinister temperament, and there were many people around him. When Xiao Qing and the others came over, Qing Guanyin's sharp eyes noticed them. He immediately jumped up and waved at Xiao Qing, "Sister Qing, come over here." When Xiao Qing walked over, she was keenly aware of the gazes cast over from the opposite side. There was a hint of ill intent in those gazes. "What are you doing?" Xiao Qing asked curiously after going over. Qing Guanyin immediately whispered, "My cousin is going to teach a few blind people a lesson." "Speaking of which, Sister Qing, why did you come to the capital?" "I have something to deal with." Xiao Qing smiled, but her eyes were locked on the people in front of her. Looking at the logo on their chests, they should be from the demonic mercenary group. The person in the lead also looked familiar. It seemed to be the leader of the demonic mercenary group or something. Anyway, she had seen this man at the scene of the friendly match with the island country. Qin Zishi followed Xiao Qing's gaze and said, "That's the leader of the demonic mercenary group, Wu Buping. I heard that the relationship between the demonic mercenary group and the Dark Thorn mercenary group has always been bad." The Shamate girl next to him also came over and said casually, "It's not bad, it's very bad. Wu Buping's subordinates are all scumbags. They bully men and women, and they do everything. They have had many conflicts with our mercenary group. I heard that their mercenary group has a paranormal who broke through to the peak of level 4 2 days ago, so they came to pick a fight." Qing Guanyin nodded angrily. "Originally, I went with my cousin and Xiao Tao to exchange for supplies today, but I didn't expect to encounter the mad demon scum bullying others. I couldn't stand it, so I said a few words, and they came up to beat me. Then, naturally, my cousin beat them. After beating the small one, the big one came, and in the end, it became this situation." Xiao Qing nodded and then asked, "What do they want to do?" Wu Buping's words are quite pleasant to hear. "What do you mean by everyone meeting each other every day? What enmity and grudge? Just let the leader give some pointers to his members. Let's have a spar and stop when it's appropriate." Bah, to think that he can make it sound so righteous and awe-inspiring. "Truly shameless," the girl named Xiao Tao said angrily. Xiao Qing didn't say anything else. She just dismissed the idea of going back with her companions and sat down beside Qing Guanyin. Zhu Machin was very strong. The paranormal sent by the demonic mercenary group was quickly dealt with by him. He raised his hand and collected all the metal fragments on the ground. Next. Chapter 321. Wu Buping gave a signal with his eyes, and an ability user immediately jumped out. "I'll take you on, please enlighten me." The two of them quickly fought. Xiao Qing couldn't help but frown. Zhu Machin's strength was naturally strong, but he couldn't withstand so many people taking turns to fight him. Before she came, there must have been several people who had already exchanged pointers with Zhu Machin. If this continued, Zhu Mochen would definitely be exhausted. However, Zhu Mochen wasn't stupid. Seeing that the situation wasn't good, he definitely wouldn't use force. She was just worried that he would die trying to save face. After 4 more rounds, Zhu Mochen was also a little tired. At that moment, a woman beside Wu Buping stood up. Captain Zhu's strength is superb. We all admire you very much. Although this little sister knows that I'm not Captain Zhu's opponent, my hands are still itchy and I'd like to exchange pointers. As soon as she stood up, Xiao Qing's expression turned serious. This woman's strength wasn't low. She should be the ability user who had broken through. If Zhu Mochen and this woman fought under normal circumstances, it was hard to say who would win or lose. But now, Zhu Mochen had already exhausted a lot of his physical strength and ability. He definitely wasn't this woman's opponent. Xiao Qing felt that this exchange wasn't simple. She was afraid that there was some kind of conspiracy going on, and this conspiracy was definitely targeting Zhu Mochen. She had a good relationship with Zhu Mochen, and she didn't like the Mad Demon mercenary group, so she stood up. Wait, everyone has been exchanging pointers for so long. You guys aren't tired, but Zhu Mochen is. How long has he been standing on the stage? Why don't you take a rest and come back another day? Xiao Qing's words were very polite, but her tone wasn't. It was obvious that she was mocking Wu Buping. After taking turns to fight him for so long, he still didn't take the advantage. How could there be such a good thing in the world? The woman was stunned for a moment. Her expression was a little ugly as she said, "You can't say that. Captain Zhu is a famous expert in the capital. Today, you said you were exchanging pointers, but in fact, you were giving us pointers. Of course, if Captain Zhu is really tired so easily, then this little sister can't force you, right? Your words hurt my heart." Xiao Qing crossed her legs and said lazily, "Because you're strong, it's reasonable for you to take turns. Isn't this the same as you have money, so it's reasonable for you to share it with everyone? Isn't this theory as shameless?" As soon as Xiao Qing said this, the expressions of the people sitting there became ugly. However, Zhu Mochen was very quick-witted. "It just so happens that I'm also feeling a bit tired. It's getting late, so let's all go back to our homes. Those who need to eat, eat, and those who need to sleep, sleep." As he spoke, he let out a yawn, looking even more lazy than Xiao Qing. Wu Buping narrowed his eyes and looked at Xiao Qing. Why do I feel that she looks familiar? A nobody, not worth mentioning. Xiao Qing's eyes curved as she said softly, "Zhu Mochen's words are reasonable. Why don't we all go back to our homes? Those who need to eat, those who need to sleep, sleep, and recover our energy. We'll fight another day. You're too modest. If an expert who defeated Abe and Qing Shui in one fell swoop is considered a nobody, then what are we?" Wu Buping narrowed his eyes and said with a smile. When he recognized Xiao Qing, he looked at Xiao Qing with more respect. After all, Xiao Qing's strength wasn't low, and after such a long time, he didn't know how much she had improved. If Xiao Qing stood on Zhu Mochen's side, it would be quite troublesome for him. "You're the captain of one of the 4 great mercenary groups in the capital. A nobody like me doesn't dare compare to you." Xiao Qing said lazily, "Since Zhu Mochen is also tired, let's all part on good terms. It's also time for dinner." Chapter 322. The woman hurriedly said, "Let's fight one last round. It's just a spar, so it won't take up much time." Xiao Qing glanced at her indifferently, her tone somewhat sarcastic. "Do you not understand human speech? Zhu Mochen is tired and can't be bothered to play with you. I've seen people who want money and power, but I've never seen someone who wants to be beaten. Today, I've learned something new. You." The woman was clearly humiliated, and her face was red with anger. She said angrily, "Since Commander Zhu is tired, I won't disturb you any longer. However, I heard that you're also an expert, so why don't you give me some pointers? She gritted her teeth as she said the last sentence. It was obvious that she hated Xiaoqing. Xiaoqing laughed. Who are you to me? My daughter or my granddaughter? You want me to give you pointers, so I'll give you pointers. How can you be so shameless? Zhu Mochen looked at Xiaoqing's poisonous tongue and inexplicably wanted to laugh. He only felt that Xiaoqing was too cute like this. The woman was so angry that she wanted to vomit blood. Wu Buping narrowed his eyes like a good old man and said with a smile, leave some room for improvement in the future. It's better for your excellency to be a little more polite with your words. Speaking politely depends on the person, but since she wants my pointers, I don't mind giving her some pointers. Xiaoqing stood up from her seat and walked towards Zhu Mochen. Can I borrow a seat? Zhu Mochen didn't say anything and gave his seat to Xiaoqing. He looked like he was waiting to watch a good show as he sat to the side. He had an indescribable sense of confidence in Xiaoqing's strength. His intuition told him that the little girl in front of him could only be abused. The woman angrily walked onto the stage and said to Xiaoqing, then I'll have to ask your excellency to give me some pointers. Xiaoqing still nodded lazily. With her strength, she would definitely crush this woman and bully her for fun. Xiaoqing stood on the stage, and the vines drilled out, forming a shield made of vines. Then, Xiaoqing did not make any extra movements. As soon as the woman entered the battle, her aura changed a lot. At least, she looked a lot more serious. She raised her hand and countless wind blades stabbed towards Xiaoqing. Ding ding dang dang, ding ding dang dang, who knew how many wind blades landed on the shield? The densely packed sound was like a little song, causing one's scalp to go numb. But the problem was, after this wave of attack, everyone's eyes fell to the ground. Xiaoqing's vine shield was intact. She even yawned lazily and said, "Girl, you have speed, but you lack strength." She was really giving pointers. The woman looked at Xiaoqing coldly. She jumped up and pressed her hands directly on the vine shield in front of Xiaoqing. The energy fluctuation on her body was very intense. Rich wind power poured from her hands into the shield. Countless sharp wind blades formed behind her back. Once the shield was broken, they would quickly shoot out and stab Xiaoqing into a honeycomb. However, the result was that no matter how much power she poured into the shield, she could not shake Xiaoqing's shield. Her face immediately became very ugly. The wind blades behind her fell, but they still could not pierce through the shield. Still not enough strength. Xiaoqing sighed and said hypocritically, with this strength, I'm afraid it can only be used to kill women. You. The woman's eyes were especially wide. Xiaoqing even felt that the corners of her eyes were about to crack. Her eyes were full of naked murderous intent. In the next second, the countless wind blades stealthily changed their direction. After brushing past the shield, they actually seemed to have eyes as they turned and stabbed at Xiaoqing from behind. Chapter 323. Xiaoqing gently stamped her foot, and another shield rose behind her. The wind blades clanged against the shield, making a clear and pleasant sound, like playing the piano in a hurry. You have the strength, but you lack accuracy. Xiaoqing raised her eyebrows and said. Although there was only a one-level difference between a level 4 and a level 5, the difference in strength was huge. Take the woman in front of her for example. She should be quite strong among level 4 paranormals, but Xiaoqing could play with her. The woman was probably irritated. Her long hair fluttered in the wind, and the air around her surged. Xiaoqing could feel that she was accumulating strength. The next attack would not be easy to block. Go to hell. The woman floated in the air. A ball of wind ability condensed in her hands, growing bigger and bigger until it finally turned into a huge ball that contained a tyrannical power. Go to hell. The woman shouted silently. She pressed her hands down, and the ball hit the shield. Boom! With a loud bang, broken stones flew everywhere, and half of the huge platform was blown off. More importantly, even after the dust settled, Xiao Qing still hadn't moved an inch. She had an undamaged shield in front of her, and she looked extremely arrogant. Strength, speed, and accuracy. You have it all, but it's useless. The woman was so angry that her face turned pale. She had used her most powerful attack, but it could not even break the shield. A trace of viciousness flashed in her eyes. Suddenly, she reached out her hand and shouted deliberately, "Look at the wind blades." Then, she threw out a round thing. As soon as it landed, it exploded, and red smoke filled the air. You can block the wind blades, but what about the invisible poisonous smoke? As soon as the woman did that, several men stood up and looked at her with unkind eyes. How dare she use such a sneaky attack? Xiao Qing was also angry, because as soon as the red smoke came out, her vines withered a little. Because of this, the poisonous smoke was very powerful. However, no matter how powerful the poisonous smoke was, it had no effect on Xiao Qing, because she was not a human. However, Xiao Qing was irritated because the poisonous smoke was similar to a chemical weapon. It was also a kind of weapon against the natural order. She suddenly raised her hand, and countless vines passed through the smoke and finally formed a vine whip, which hit the woman's face quickly, accurately, and fiercely. There was a saying that you should not hit people in the face, but Xiao Qing wanted to hit her face. She wanted to hit her fiercely and mercilessly. The woman was completely unprepared. She did not expect Xiao Qing to fight back in this situation. Then, she was like a small spinning top, and was whipped. "Please show mercy," Wu Buping hurriedly said. It was not easy for him to cultivate this woman. If she was destroyed in Xiao Qing's hands, it would be terrible. Xiao Qing sneered. Before she stopped, she hit the woman hard again, and directly spun her out. How did the lyrics go? Spinning and jumping, I closed my eyes. That woman was spinning and jumping, I opened my eyes, and one of my front teeth was whipped out. In the end, she was like a dead dog, lying under the ring. Xiao Qing did not feel that she had hit too hard at all. She smiled lazily, and then said innocently, "Oh, I accidentally did not control my strength well." Then she said very hypocritically, "How is it? You're not dead, right?" The woman was so angry that her mouth was trembling. When she opened her mouth, she spat out another tooth and a lot of blood. Xiao Qing rolled up her sleeves and continued, "Oh, you're not dead, are you? Why are you vomiting blood? Did I not control my strength well and seriously injure you from thousands of miles away?" Wu Buping looked at the scene. If he did not stop Xiao Qing, his people would be humiliated by Xiao Qing to the point that they even thought of dying. So Wu Buping hurriedly said, "It's just a spar. Why do you have to do this? It was your people who threw the chemical weapon first, right? Could it be that I remembered wrongly?" Xiao Qing rolled her eyes and said, "I'm really sorry. I'm not the kind of person to go overboard when sparring. You didn't get hurt, right? This is really my fault. But you too, why do you have to ask me to teach you? It's fine if you want me to teach you, but at least get someone with thick skin to teach you. Look, your teeth are falling out. Don't touch my porcelain. Your teeth are falling out, and you're saying you're hurt." The woman was so angry by Xiao Qing's words that she almost vomited blood again. She gritted her teeth. "Xiao Qing. You and I can't live under the same sky." Wu Buping was still smiling, but his eyes were a little cold. After all, she was his people. He also lost face when she was bullied like this. Wu Buping immediately said, "You must be joking. No matter what, at least we won't try to scam you. Although little Chu is in the wrong, you still hit her a little too hard. How can you hit a girl in the face? It's just a spar. Don't go too far. Xiao Qing blinked her eyes and said innocently, "It's not my fault." At that time, the red mist was all over the sky. I couldn't even see a shadow. I just stretched out a vine and swung it. Who knew that it would hit her face? Even if you want to blame gravity, you can't blame me. She can only blame herself for reaping what she sowed. At worst, I'll give you some crystals and ask your subordinate to make a porcelain tooth. She's ugly to begin with, and now she looks even worse. As she spoke, Xiao Qing really took out a few crystals and threw them accurately at the woman's face. The woman was embarrassed on the spot. She was already ashamed and angry. After being humiliated to this extent by Xiao Qing's words, she rolled her eyes and fainted. Xiao Tao rolled on the side laughing. She pointed at Wu Buping and said, "Leader Wu," this time she fainted by herself. "Don't blame us. It's useless to try to scam her. We all saw it." Gu Pan Pan immediately said, "That's right. This person is too weak. How could she faint just like that? She's not really trying to scam us, is she?" After saying that, she patted her chest and looked like a scared baby. Chapter 324. The girls chattered amongst themselves. If the woman who had fainted heard them, she would probably wake up from anger. Even Wu Buping, who was known as the Smiling Tiger, could no longer maintain his smile. After slapping them in the face, Xiao Qing said, "It's getting late, so it's time to eat." Then, she led her companions and prepared to leave. It was as if she had brushed away her clothes, concealing her achievements and fame. Then, Zhu Machin said, "I'll treat you to a meal." Xiao Tao, who was standing off to the side, immediately cried out in surprise. Her short, wine-red hair trembled, fully expressing her surprise. "Heavens, boss, you're so stingy, but you're actually treating us? Don't tell me you're treating us to East Street's noodles." Zhu Machin immediately rolled his eyes. "Did I say I was going to treat you?" Xiao Tao was even more shocked. "Holy shit! Boss, are you not going to treat me?" They laughed and joked around, completely ignoring Wu Buping. It was no wonder that this Smiling Tiger, who was known throughout the capital, couldn't maintain his smile. His expression stiffened as he sat there for a long time. Only after Xiao Qing and the others had left did he suddenly slam the armrest. The entire seat was instantly sealed by cold air. It cracked, and finally, with a crack, it shattered into pieces. Because he hadn't reacted in time, he sat down on the ground. Someone immediately snickered. Wu Buping glanced over, his face ashen, as if he had just discovered his wife cheating on him. "Let's go." Wu Buping gritted his teeth. He had originally planned on plotting against Zhu Machin, but now he had been slapped in the face by Xiao Qing. However, his heart was full of vigilance. He really couldn't figure out the depth of Xiao Qing's strength, because the last woman to appear today was already at the peak of the 4th rank. However, Xiao Qing had played around with her like she was toying with her, and she had beaten her up like she was beating up a grandson. Of course, after the woman had taken out that medicine, she had thought that she would win and had let down her guard. However, Xiao Qing's strength was definitely terrifying. This was evident from the fact that she was able to block all of the woman's attacks with a single vine shield. As Wu Buping walked back, he pondered with a gloomy face. He touched his chin and thought in horror, could Xiao Qing be a 5th-level paranormal? Thinking of this, he immediately shivered. No, the highest level that had appeared so far was only the peak of level 4. Level 5 had only appeared among zombies and mutated animals and plants. There shouldn't be anyone who had broken through to the 5th rank yet, but people always thought of the worst. Wu Buping ordered in a low voice, "Before Xiao Qing leaves the capital, temporarily give up on the plans against Zhu Machin. Send someone to keep an eye on Xiao Qing. If there are any movements, immediately report back to me." "Yes." His subordinate hurriedly replied. On the other side, Qin Zishi sent a message back to her grandfather, saying that she wouldn't be coming home for dinner tonight as someone was treating her. Then, the group of people followed Zhu Mochen out to eat. Zhu Mochen wasn't stingy this time. The place he was treating them to wasn't a restaurant, but a hotel. Actually, calling it a hotel wasn't quite right. At this scale, it was at most a small restaurant owned by his family. In order to prove that he wasn't being stingy, Zhu Mochen hurriedly said, "This restaurant's lady boss's cooking is very good. It's much better than those 5-star or 6-star hotels. I definitely won't forget after eating here once." Zhu Mochen was probably a regular here. As soon as he walked in, the waiter said familiarly, "Big brother Chen, you're here. How many of you are here? I'll arrange a seat for you and then go call the lady boss. She's in the kitchen right now. It's just the few of us. You can arrange it as you see fit." Zhu Mochen waved his hand casually, then said, "If there's no other choice, we can go to the backyard." Chapter 325. With so many people, their restaurant didn't have such a large private room. The waiter hurriedly said, "Then let's go to the backyard. I'll get someone to tidy it up first." Then, he ran off to tidy up the backyard. The backyard was quite large. Several waiters brought over a large round table and some stools. After they sat down around the large round table, the waiter came over to make tea before going to find the lady boss. The lady boss here is very good at cooking casseroles and all kinds of meat dishes. She's from the northeast, so her alcohol tolerance is quite high. After Zhu Mochen sat down, he said, "Basically, whenever I come back from a mission, I come here to eat a meal. I never get tired of it." "Boss, are you really not trying to hide how stingy you are?" Xiao Tao looked at Zhu Mochen suspiciously. Zhu Mochen's skin was quite thick, and he had no intention of replying. It was obvious that he was prepared to skip this topic. The lady boss quickly came over. The lady boss looked to be around 34 or 35 years old. She was a charming middle-aged woman, and her enchanting eyes made her seem especially sexy. "Oh, I was wondering who it was. So it's Captain Zhu. How do you have time to come here?" The lady boss seemed to be very familiar with Zhu Mochen. She didn't hold back when she teased him. 2 days ago, someone told me that he was incredibly busy." Zhu Mochen hurriedly said, "He was busy 2 days ago, but hasn't he already been busy?" The lady boss glanced at him disdainfully, then asked, "What do you want to eat this time?" Zhu Mochen naturally let Xiao Qing order. He was the one who was treating, and Xiao Qing was too embarrassed to order all of his favorite dishes. Thus, after ordering 2 dishes, she didn't order anything else. Zhu Mochen ordered a few more dishes, then said, "Don't forget to order a pot of your specialty fish head tofu soup." Only then did the lady boss wave her hand and take the menu to cook. After the lady boss left, there was no one else around. The few of them began to chat. The red smoke that woman threw out this time can't be underestimated. "I just don't know how much of this medicine Wu Buping has, or if he has any other types of medicine. Everyone has seen that the effects of this medicine should be quite good. If it's not some kind of heaven-defying poison, it should be quite suitable for us," Zhu Mochen analyzed. None of the people present were fools. They had already thought it through. Wu Buping definitely had more than one type, not to mention the quantity. For example, although the effects of the red smoke were unclear, Xiao Qing knew that it was indeed very powerful to be able to make her vines almost wither the moment they came into contact with it. "What I'm most worried about is their experiments," Xiao Qing said with a heavy expression. It was fine if it was an ordinary experiment, but if they used humans to test the effect, it was equivalent to a human experiment. Chemical weapons were very lethal, but their impact on the environment was very serious. What's more, they could even spread diseases like plagues. Just like some of the things that Japan researched in the past, in fact, Japan didn't stop researching these things during peacetime. Previously, Xiao Qing's army had bombed a certain type of research institute. Xiao Qing had also seen with her own eyes that the people who were poisoned as experimental subjects were miserable beyond words. Now that it was the end of the world, whether it was morality or law, those restrictions were very weak. It was inevitable that some people would do unforgivable things. Xiao Qing couldn't help but be a little worried. They shouldn't dare to commit a crime and conduct such an experiment. However, they should have developed a lot of common chemical weapons. That's why they had the confidence to plot against me. Zhu Mochen rubbed his chin and said lazily, Wu Buping is very ambitious and has no conscience. If he continues to develop like this, it's not certain whether he can do such a thing. Chapter 326. It's better to be on guard. Xiao Qing nodded, then said, My vines cut off a bit of that red mist. Do you want to take it back and study it? Of course. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you'll never be defeated, Zhu Mochen said in surprise. Zhu Mochen exclaimed in pleasant surprise. Xiao Qing stretched out her hand, and a withered vine appeared in her palm. It's hollow. The mist is inside. After saying that, Xiao Qing threw the vine to Zhu Mochen. Naturally, she also kept some for herself. When she went back, she would let Yan Qiue study its composition. While the group was chatting, the lady boss began to serve the dishes. The dishes she made were already very good in terms of taste. Moreover, they looked, smelled, and looked very appetizing at first glance. 2 cold dishes. Everyone, eat first. The hot dishes will be served soon. The waiter was also a tactful person. After serving the dishes, he left. The rest of the group continued to guess. Xiao Qing was actually quite curious. By the way, why is Wu Buping targeting you? Among the 4 mercenary groups in the capital, our group's overall strength should be the weakest. After all, we walk the path of the elite. Our members are extremely few, and we rely on high-end martial arts to support us. Compared to the mercenary groups that have hundreds or thousands of members, we have lost a lot in terms of the number of members. When Zhu Mochen said this, he didn't seem dispirited at all. On the contrary, he looked very proud. What he said was true. His mercenary group, which had a small number of members, was almost equivalent to a small team of ability users. Yet, it had actually suppressed several large mercenary groups with hundreds of members and become one of the top 4 mercenary groups in the capital. It was indeed something to be proud of. Wu Buping is a very ambitious person. In the beginning, he tried to poach my members, but my members were quite reliable and didn't get poached. Later, his mercenary group gradually grew, and from poaching, he developed to wanting to annex us and become the number 1 mercenary group in the capital. After all, persimmons are soft persimmons. When he said this, Zhu Mochen laughed. He actually said that I'm not a soft persimmon, but compared to the other 2 of the 4 mercenary groups, we really are soft persimmons. Xiao Qing couldn't help but laugh. She lowered her voice and said, So Wu Buping has been targeting you? You can put it that way. Especially recently, their regiment has had experts breaking through one after another. Their ambition has become even more uncontrollable. This time, their attempt to make a move on me is a signal. Zhu Mochen narrowed his eyes and said indifferently, I estimate that in a few days, they will make a move against our mercenary group. Although Wu Buping's ambition isn't small, there's also a huge problem. His mercenary group has too many members and is too messy. It's not pure, and its cohesiveness isn't as good as the other 3 groups. To think about it, he needs to get rid of the impurities first, and kick out some unqualified members. However, Qin Zishi analyzed in a low voice. Mad Demon's reputation is too bad. It's all because of those low-quality members. If he blindly indulges them, then he definitely won't be able to achieve great things. Xiao Qin rubbed her chin. That's not necessarily true. After all, Wu Buping's leadership ability and strength are both quite good. It's a pity that he's a bit blind. If he was given a chance, Mad Demon might actually be able to climb up step by step. Forget about it. Let's not talk about this and ruin everyone's appetite. Xiao Qin picked up a small piece of pickled vegetable and said, let's eat first. The lady boss's cooking was indeed quite good, and her alcohol tolerance was also quite high. After all the dishes were served, she accompanied everyone to drink, and half of the wine went into her stomach. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.